All right, everybody, welcome to another Friday Night Live. It's been a while since I've done one. I've just been busy doing lots of things. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year and Happy Holidays, whatever you're celebrating out there. Yeah, I'm excited to do this one. I kind of did a theme that had to do with the holidays. Painter that many of you may not know about, but my dad turned me on to when I was very young. The Haddon Sundblom. And he was a really beautiful painter of edges, and in general, just a great painter. Painted a lot like in the vein of Sargent, Zorn, painters of that. He was heavily influenced by those painters as well as Henri. So I'm going to go ahead and paint this. You can see I sketched it in really quickly because I'll be talking a lot and working fast. Normally I would do this alla prima with a brush and not with a pencil down, but I fixed it so you can see it's not smearing. Spray fixative is in a can, and you basically seal your drawing with it. Looks like a hairspray can, kind of. You know, Grumbacher makes it, Winsor Newton makes it, Krylon makes it. So it just seals the drawing so it doesn't get aggravated by the turpentine, which would normally just erase your drawing. So you see I've got it sketched in. He's got quite an expression on his face. Most of Sundblom's Santa Clauses were very expressive because he was actually hired to redesign the Coca-Cola, the image of Santa Claus, and he was kind of best known for that. He paints very much like also Gil Elvgren, if those of you who know the pinup artist Gil Elvgren, very similar painter of edges. The way he paints hair, things of that sort are very similar. This book here, which is called A Dream of Santa by Haddon Sundblom's Vision, or Dream of Santa, Haddon Sundblom's Vision, is a really great book. It's one of the better ones if you want to just get some really cool pictures of what I'm talking about. That's the one I'm doing tonight, but I flipped the head because I liked it better going from left to right. And if you go look through here, you'll just see a bunch of really very, 50s kind of, I don't know, Norman Rockwell-ish as far as how they're staged. I mean, it'd be like the ideal Christmas scene, the way everyone would love it to be. But it's very commercial, and obviously Coca-Cola is the one hiring him to do it. But he painted him for about 30 years, and he really coined the modern day image of what we think of as Santa Claus, to me anyway. So that's just a little background on Haddon Sundblom. You may want to look him up and check out some of his stuff. He didn't always do Santa Claus. He did other ads as well. He did the Quaker Oats head, which is kind of a cool little head. Overall, you won't be seeing my palette because we're not shooting these quite as robustly as we do our regular online content. We don't have 3 cameras. We're not shooting with our high def cameras. We're just shooting with a little, camcorder one because of the way that we have to set the thing up to do this. So anyway, yeah, I hope you guys are doing well out there and everything's going good and you guys are all in good health and spirits and all that kind of good stuff. I'm just going to lay down some stains right now just to kind of kill the white of the canvas. And when I say kill, it's just get rid of. And we're just going to go through and we're just going to run like a Neapolitan type effect across this, which is like a red band across the cheeks, which you can see he's just gone ridiculously red with the cheeks. I mean, I thought I liked red cheeks and noses, but man, Sundblom will just belt it in there like straight CAD medium out of the tube or something. So I'm just going in. It's a Masonite panel. I'm not sure what he worked on. I'm sure it was a canvas of some sort. Don't always chase down exactly what the person's using. If I think I know and I have a good idea, I will try to duplicate that just so I can get a closer look with the edges and things. But I do like Masonite. It handles for this kind of painting really nicely. This is wet into wet, alla prima painting, very much like Sargent, Sorolla, Zorn, the great alla prima painters. And again, I think you could easily put Sundblom up there in those guys as far as his edge work. Some people would argue that, but I don't know. I think he's got some pretty spectacular edge manipulation. And so normally when you were doing this, you would be doing it in such a way where you're pulling the clarity out of the soup, so to speak. This soupy, terpy mess of you wouldn't have a drawing that's this, delineated. Let's put it that way. This would be similar, if any of the online stuff, it would be similar to the direct approach or the soft scumbling approach that we go over, I think, in like phase 2 portrait painting, or I think it was phase 2 portrait painting. And if you have any questions, feel free. I'll be trying to paint a little bit and talk a little bit, and it's pretty hard to do, but we're pretty good at it. We've been doing it for many years, so feel free to fire some questions if you have them. All right.
First question, they were wondering if the online school would ever have some anatomy sculpting classes, kind of like the brick and mortar school used to have.
It may very well. I mean, I'd be the one to probably do it, or I'd probably have to hire someone to do it. I would feel comfortable doing it. I haven't done that class in many years. It's such a time sucker. It's a fun class, one of the better ways to study anatomy, but it's very advanced, and until you've really studied pretty in-depth, like the, really in-depth Bridgman, really in-depth Goldfinger and things like that, jumping into sculpting anatomy, I think is probably better left after you've done a couple years of hardcore academic study out of books and learning to memorize the muscles and the names and all that kind of good stuff. So I would say yes, very well. If it is, it'll be a couple years off because it's not high on the priority list. I'm working on one right now, a Bridgman redo, where we're a kind of a book that'll accompany the Bridgman book called Bridgman Unabridged, and I'll be doing that one hopefully this summer or fall. And it's a very robust project. I mean, it's a big book, and I'm have to do just tons of drawings for it. But it's part Frazetta, part photo work, part Bridgman, re-cleaning them up using the Riley rhythms and methods and stuff. So that'll be a fun one. And those are the classes I think I would focus on most. Eric's intensive classes, which we already have 1 or 2 coming up. So again, those are the things I would be really putting my attention on if I was studying anatomy. And then sculpting would be a couple years down the road after you're really mature with your knowledge.
They're wondering how you got your foot in the door with your first fine arts gallery show.
I started galleries pretty young. I mean, I think I was in my early to mid-20s. You just have to have a good body of work. You have to have a pretty consistent style, which isn't normally something that young artists have. That's one of the hardest things, is to have you can mimic a style. Like, you maybe see some style out there of some painter that you admire, and you kind of hang your hat on that, and you kind of become like I got a little train coming through, so we're not going to edit those, so you'll be getting to hear those full-fledged. And you'll probably get to know why I complain so much about them when I'm normally on the online school. Occasionally, something will slip through the cracks, and you'll hear me complain about a train going through. We're about 20 feet off the train tracks. It's pretty interesting. Sometimes I'll sleep down here, and it's something else, man. It's like those things are coming right through the living room. So my first gallery show, I was in my first one-man show, I was probably 26 maybe. It was early on. I don't even paint anywhere remotely near how I painted during that period. I was painting really tight oils in kind of a Clark Healings. He's a deceased, passed away a few years ago, but he was a really strong painter. I liked his stuff a lot when I was younger. Still do. Don't paint like it much anymore. But anyway, I was painting these really tight scenes, and I was trying to travel, and my goal was to travel and paint, and like everybody's, and I was getting some kudos, and I was getting out there in some show. I would get in shows first. I would get into Oil Painters of America, Portrait Society of America, California Art Club, shows where you can kind of get your name out there a little bit and enter some competitions and kind of start cutting your teeth before you go trying to get in a gallery and committing to large shows where you have to execute pieces really quickly on command. You might have a show that's 6 months off and they need 30 pieces, and they're not going to micromanage anything about you doing that. They're just going to say, well, have those 30 pieces here by this date, or even way earlier, so we can do the catalog, so we can do all of our press releases, and we can get some momentum going. So what a lot of people don't realize, I think, when they go out there to do the gallery thing is number one, you have to have a lot of original content, which takes time to get. Whether you're shooting models, whether you're traveling to get that reference, it can't be plagiarized, pulled off the internet, ripped off out of a magazine. You'll get in big trouble sooner or later doing that. So you can borrow bits and pieces of old archival, or non-archival, like really old, late 1800 photographs or something. You might be able to pull a wagon out of one of them and flop it and change the lighting, and by the time you're done, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But a lot of times you need to get your reference. So the things to think about as a young painter going into galleries is, number one, you have to have a consistent style, which takes a while to get. You have to have a consistent body of work, probably 10 to 15 paintings that you can show a gallery that shows consistency of concept, idea, execution, subject matter, usually. And then you're going to want to pick a gallery that's reputable, and they're going to be picky. So you might have to take some time and and relax while you're trying to get into those galleries. You may want to start with an entry-level gallery. Even the entry levels can be, sometimes difficult. And I don't mean to paint a difficult picture of this, because this is just the reality of it. It's not a matter of, anything other than this is my experience. So I should pepper it with that, because you may find it to be quite different. I don't know. Maybe I have a certain way about me that has led to certain things in my career. So I want to be careful to preface that by saying, if you're a young painter that wants to do galleries, by all means, go for it. But just be prepared. Prepared for it to be a bit of an arduous road, like they all are, and just have fun with that process, and don't be too hard on yourself. So yeah, I was in my early 20s when I got into a gallery that happened to be where my wife happened to get a job there later, and worked there in my early career, and it was kind of fun because I could come down and see her, and she could keep an eye on my work, and it was just a really neat time. And we were very young, and she was going to San Diego State, and I was teaching classes down the street from this gallery, Robson Gallery, that John Asaro showed in, and Walt Gonski, and a bunch of really great painters were showing there. And it was just this little hole-in-the-wall gallery in the middle of San Diego, and I just got really lucky to get in there, and then I enjoyed getting to know some of those painters that I admired for so long. So right now, I'm just putting in, it's nothing fancy right now. It's going to look kind of not so good right now because it's just the stain phase, and that's an awkward, odd phase. So we're just going to, and I need to let it sit into the surface a little bit. And this particular masonite surface is not absorbing the paint quite as fast as I'm used to. So I'm just kind of, you can see me jumping around here, going to the background, go over to the hat, come back and test this, see how much terp, how it's evaporating. And then I start to kind of, you can see it's still activating a little too much for my comfort. So I don't want to do anything over the top of that because it'll just pull it right off. Okay, you can go ahead and...
what type of board are you using?
It's just a piece of hardboard, masonite. You could call it by any number of different names. It's just, mostly, I think of it as masonite. A lot of people call it hardboard. If you go onto off Home Depot or Lowe's or any of those, you can pick it up pretty cheap and have them cut it for you. Or you can buy it sometimes over online at some of the art stores, Cheap Joe's, Blick. You can also find it at some of your local art stores, sometimes pre-cut. It's just a nice, cheap surface, and it's archival, relatively, as much as, I'm not a hardcore, ridiculous, I'm more concerned with my surfaces than I am actually my paints or my brushes. But as far as surfaces, like masonite with gesso on it is pretty solid.
And what are you using as a thinner to dilute your oils?
Just the Gamsol. I call it terp. Occasionally you hear me slip and say terp instead of Gamsol. I mean the same thing when I say it. I just have been I use terp for probably turpentine or terpenoid or whatever, odorless terpenoid for maybe the first 10, 15 years of my career. And then I switched over to Gamsol, which is Gamblin. It's a little less obtrusive, doesn't affect me as much in certain ways. So I prefer it personally, and that's what I use now, and that's what we use at our atelier. So Gamsol is what I'm using. I'm not using any mediums. I'm not using any third Damar, third stand oil, third terp, kind of mixtures. Just using, straight. I find that there's enough linseed in the paints already that I don't need to add any.
Another one that says, when they try to loosely paint like you're doing, it looks kind of weird, and they're wondering if it's really about the drawing skills.
Oh yeah, it's 100% drawing skills. I mean, without the phenomenal drawing skills, you're kind of dead in the water. I mean, even if you do a projection or you do a gridded sketch or something, sooner or later that sketch is going to disappear as you cover it with paint. And then you're just freehand guessing at your placements and your measurements, and that's more comparative measurement. So no matter what gridding system you use in painting, ultimately the drawing will disappear and you will be called upon to spatially relate objects off of other objects, and seeing that relationship is what drawing freehand is really all about. So the more you can freehand draw, if you're a digital painter and you're coming in, there's no undo buttons, you can damage your surface to the point where it's not repairable. You have to be a lot more vigilant, a lot more careful, and a lot more patient, I found. And then this is never to belittle anything, or I love digital, but it is a lot more lenient medium. It allows you to cheat, change, alter, undo, use layers, undo layers, turn layers off, and that's all going to be stuff that's going to allow you to work more, in some ways efficiently, but also more sloppy. So when you come to a medium like this, it's not going to give you all that leeway or all that, cut you that slack. So you're going to find that it's difficult for you to sometimes deal with that if you're newer to it. You just got to be patient with yourself as you're making that transition.
Is it possible to see your palette real quick? Can we pan over that maybe?
It's crazy palette. I mean, you can kind of pan over there if you want. It's just 52 different colors. I wouldn't advise it. You could paint this painting with the Zorn palette pretty much. Maybe with the addition of a little bit of phthalo green, because he's got some phthalo over around the side there, around where the beard is, to give it kind of a electric kind of look to it, which I like a lot, and I've done that many times myself in other paintings. But yeah, it's an uncontrolled level 4 palette. So when you're learning to paint, you want to start with a level 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, right? The limited palettes, burnt umber and white, black and white, phthalo blue, black and white, those are your level 1 palettes. When you get up into your Zorn palette, you're opening up your palette range a little bit, but there's still only 4 colors or so. You know, you get into your warm cool palette, and again you go into a warm and cool of all your primaries: blue, red, yellow, black, white. So you now have like 7, 8 colors. Then you go into level 4, and you have that level 3 embedded in it. But then you start adding all these supplemental colors that are just colors that you like personally. You may be fond of transparent red oxide. You may be fond of sap green. Someone else might hate sap green. You don't have to have it on your palette. It's your choice. So what we start to see is, as we open up the range of our palettes, we need to be more experienced with our ability to mix. Our drawing skills by that time should be phenomenal. If they're not, we should not be opening up, in my opinion, a palette to that level, because it's just like a suicide mission. So you want to kind of make sure that you work your way up that chain of palettes. Now, nobody wants to really do that, in my experience. A lot of people fight against that. They want to jump right into all the color. They think that's the fun part, and they find themselves in a lot of trouble. And then they blame their drawing, they blame other areas, or they blame their color or whatever, when it's really an edge problem, a value problem, a shape problem, a design problem. It's an aesthetic problem that wasn't developed properly in their training, whatever their training was, you know.
Could you talk about paint control when painting alla prima? It says they often lose control and find their values blending towards the middle, and my colors getting muddy.
Muddy color is not something to worry too much about. A lot of people are so phobic of muddy color. To me, every color I see is muddy. I mean, that whole face right there, it's got some chroma to it. It's kind of this nice, rich, warm to it, but it's not bright color. It's not garish color. So when you mix, when you start mixing any colors together, they're going to gray themselves. They're going to start graying down. A lot of complements are going to start getting mixed together, and you're going to start seeing your colors start to lose their original intensity. What I like to do is not add a lot of white. I do use a lot of white, but I usually add color. I try to lighten my colors with other light colors first. And if I can't succeed then I add a little white, but then I add a little bit of, say, yellow back into it to warm it up, a little bit of cad red light to warm it up, a little cad orange to warm it up. So you're always mixing and then bringing it back up a little bit in intensity and chroma. I am not a color theory guy. I work a lot from observation, from plein air painting, from painting from live models for many, I don't know, 20, 30 years now, close to 30 years. So I learned a lot about color through observation of nature and how it presents itself in live action situations. Not so much, learning, kind of like learning, and I have nothing against learning the Munsell wheel or doing like these color charts and running them out to infinitum, and doing that. To me, I think there is other interesting ways to learn color on top of that, ones that I'll be carrying through and teaching you more as we get into stuff like in classes or online or whatever. But to each their own. I mean, there's guys like Graydon Parrish, who I just have a huge amount of respect for, and the guy's awesome. He's well-read, he's incredibly intelligent, and he loves color theory, and he really is good at it. So you'll look at a guy like that, but he paints a lot tighter than, say, I do. I've mixed a lot more controlled chaos color that moves in and out of it. It's harder to, use formula to navigate color in that manner. So you have to be a little bit more intuitive with your color sense. And that's not, again, to downplay what Graydon does. It's just saying it's a different way of looking at color. It's for different problems, for different ways of solving different things. So I don't think it's ever bad to know too much, but I think there is a problem with some people locking onto things and just becoming too anal and uptight about it, and then they can't get out of their own way. And in some ways, then your knowledge can become a hindrance. So we always have to balance our knowledge with intuition, with our ability to override it when called upon. And we have to learn that usually the hard way, just through trial and error and experimenting and all that kind of good stuff. So I have three, I have CAD red light, I have CAD red medium, I have alizarin, I have a couple other reds that are just, reds I've had out for other classes and stuff. I didn't put them out specifically for this. You can paint a painting very similar to another painter without using their exact palette. It's not absolutely necessary to have every color they had. We're not trying to do forgeries. We're trying to learn how to mix and move color like some of our favorite painters. In order to do so, we just want to be in the ballpark of their palette choices. But a lot of them, it would be hard pressed to know what palette they really use anyway, even if someone claimed to know the palette that they stereotypically use. Most artists add and subtract colors all the time based on mood. They're very flighty, and most artists are not setting up a palette like vector calculus chemist or something. They are always, I'm like a cook, not like a baker. I throw a little of this in, throw a little of that in, try a little of this color, try a little of that color, put this color in my palette for a couple months. Sometimes I love the color and I just forget to put it out, and then I move on to some other combination. That's how I work. I'm always looking to explore color in my painting. That's just kind of how I am, and that's a little different than most, but that's what I do.
What did you use to fix the pencil drawing?
Spray fixative, workable fixative. And that's what it's called. And Krylon makes it, like I said. Grumbacher makes it. Winsor Newton makes it. Comes in a can. You shake it up. You spray it over. Don't douse it. Just go, just pss, 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 turn the painting. Pss, 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 just kind of keep turning it. Do it outside so you don't breathe it. It's pretty harsh stuff. And just kind of, get it on there. Let it sit outside for 5-10 minutes as it evaporates and blows out into our ozone, which is not good. But come on, there's other worse things. We're pretty harmless, us painters. But and then you just let it sit, and then it's good to go. When you put paint over the top of it, it's not going to erase it. It's not going to mess it up and cause all kinds of collateral damage.
What are your feelings about black paint? Do you use it?
Yeah, all the time. Black, look at Sargent, look at Soroya, look at Fetchin. All use black heavily, masterfully, but heavily. It's like white. White's not evil, black's not evil. It's the abuse of it and the lack of knowledge with understanding values and edges that seem to cause the most collateral damage with adding a black onto the palette or something of that sort. You can mix beautiful blacks with any number of combinations, so you don't need black. You can phthalo blue and burnt sienna make a great black. Phthalo green and alizarin crimson make a great black. Ultramarine and burnt sienna, or even you could use burnt umber. That would make a beautiful black. What we're making when we mix color blacks is chromatic blacks, blacks that have color in them. Now, if you use ivory black, lamp black, charcoal, whatever, just make sure you add a little color into your black. Maybe add a little green in there, add a little blue in there, add a little red in there, so that it's not a dead gray when it gets mixed. So that way you'll have a colorful gray when you're mixing.
What's the difference between a lead ground and an oil ground?
Usually they mean the same. A lot of times when someone says it's an oil primed canvas, it's usually lead primed. But I know that alkyd priming also is sometimes considered oil primed, and it is maybe titanium as well. So it is sometimes hard to know if you're getting a real lead primed canvas unless you lead it yourself. Buy the lead, flake white, Kremitz white. It's hard to get lead now in some areas. I know California's banned it. It's very dangerous. I don't like using soluble lead as my mixing white because I have cuts a lot of times, paper cuts, stuff like that, and I'm going to get it into those cuts, and lead is very easily absorbed into the blood system and the body, and it's not good for you. So I would be very careful using real lead. But you can buy a lot of times you can ask the manufacturer. I thought like Glossins was lead, and it's alkyd, but it acts very much like lead to me. So there's not that much difference. Not enough to where I would want to risk it or. So I used to lead all my own canvases, and I've gone through years of doing that. I haven't done it in a couple years now. It's a lot of work. It's dangerous. You got to treat it really respectfully and dispose of the materials in a very environmentally, I would say, conscientious manner. By getting the hazardous waste people, usually in some areas, depending on where you live, will come out and pick it up, but they charge you a little fee, which I'm happy to pay. so that it doesn't go in a landfill, doesn't go in the trash can, doesn't go down the drain. You don't want lead getting into the water table, into this stuff. So putting it in a landfill, not a smart move for future generations, or even, just, you got to think about these things nowadays, because, we're burning through our environment pretty fast, and we need to, as artists, I think, we're kind of usually more conscientious than most, hopefully. And you want to be, you're trying to depict the beauty of the world, and you don't want to be, being hypocritical and destroying it while you're trying to do that. So, I mean, within reason, I don't get crazy. I just don't pour my turp down the drain. I don't, again, I don't dispose of my paint rags. I let them evaporate first, dry out, then I throw them away, or, things like that. So just be, common sense will go a long ways in life in general.
How long have you been teaching?
Oh, geez. Started in my early 20s. I'm 45 now, so a better part of 25 years, maybe 20. Started at school a little bit of teaching, so I'd say a good 27, 28 years, long enough to have learned a little bit about the craft of getting people good and how to navigate the treacherous waters of getting good. I mean, there's a lot of pitfalls and valleys that you got to kind of try to navigate around and through. So yeah, it's been a long time. Been a lot of fun.
When following the online program, in terms of time allocation, how would you balance studying the classes and doing the exercises versus drawing from life versus drawing from imagination?
I'll let that train go by before I answer that. That's a really excellent question, and it's one that I'll be addressing more thoroughly in the months to come as I do a few podcasts on setting up a proper training program online. I know it's been a problem for a lot of people. I take it for granted that I'm really good at multitasking and really good at setting up schedules for myself from a very early age, but that's not always a common thing. So I will be happy to be kind of more of a tutor in that manner. I just have to really sit down and give it some really good thought about the different curriculums that people would be navigating along with the online. So say you come in the online and you say, I want to set up a program for animation. Well, then I'll have a trajectory of classes and how many times you should take them and all that ultimately. But that's going to be a year off or so, because it's just a lot of work to sit down and figure out. And I've worked in most of those industries, so I have a very good understanding. I have a lot of friends that work in them. So I need to do some due diligence, talk to some people, go back and forth. But I've seen an awful lot. I've watched people. So to make a long story short, when you're setting up time allocation, if you want to be a visual development conceptor for Lucas and you want to work on the most recent Star Wars, well, we got to factor in a lot of invention work, because we're going to be doing a lot of invention, but we can't invent if we don't know what we're inventing. So we've got to spend, your job's going to be a little bit harder than a portrait commission painter, right? You're going to have to incubate, work harder, study harder, do more time in the trenches than the other artists, because the demands of your job are going to be greater. So from that standpoint, you're going to go through the courses numerous times rather than just once. You're going to be trying to learn landscape, still life, portrait, narrative, everything, because you're going to be called upon to do that. Whereas in a portrait commission, very specific painter may just focus on all the portrait phases and kind of let up a little bit on landscape, let up a little bit on some of these other classes that don't really fit into their wheelhouse. Although I think if they did a good dose of strong landscape, they would become a stronger and better commissioned portrait painter. But a lot of them don't see it that way and are thinking way too compartmentalized, and they're not thinking outside the box enough, in my opinion. And but when you get to the great ones, you get to the Sargents. I mean, Sargent could hold his own in any genre: still life, landscape, figure, whatever, nude. It wouldn't matter what that guy painted. So he's one of those people I would look at if you really want to look to someone to guide you, people like that. But sometimes you have to become a one-trick pony, because you just don't have the time to incubate that long. You have to hit the ground running. You're forcing yourself out there to try to make a living too early. And that's an unfortunate predicament. But if it does happen, then it does happen. Most of us are always going to be shot out there a little early. It's just it's really hard to get to incubate long enough. But that question is a multifaceted question that would require a lot of insight and time, more than I have while I'm painting, to answer correctly. But my suggestion is, first determine where you want to work, what you want to do, then Yes, as much as you can get in. Watch the videos one day, do the exercise the next day, go into a life class the day after that. Go back, watch another video, and duplicate that sequence until you get really comfortable with navigating, taking the information you're learning online with our courses, extrapolating it in class where the teacher doesn't know the information probably and can't help you much. So you're going to kind of be on your own, but at least you have a good environment, hopefully, good lighting, good model. And then you just have to really start thinking about what was Jeff talking about when he was saying follow the rhythm lines from the seventh cervical vertebrae down to the sacrum. And you got to start thinking, okay, I remember him talking about that. Then you got to go home and watch it again. Okay, now I remember. Oh yeah, okay, take notes. Then come into class, have your notes with you. Go over your notes before class starts. Look at them, bring photos of drawings of mine in with you, or my drawing book, or good books that you have. Cross-reference them at break time from the model. Start looking at them, look at your drawing, and try to determine why your drawing doesn't look like their drawings. So this is kind of the process. It's a very heavy due diligence type process where you are constantly cross-referencing what you know with what you wish you know. Okay, so again, it's part of what you see, part of what you know, and part of what you wish you saw. The what you wish you saw is going to be your imagination. What you know is from academic training out of books, Bridgman, Hogarth, all these different books. So what you see is obviously what you see. That's what you observe when you're sitting in a class looking at a model. So we have to filter it through these 3 different layers. Imagination work is one of the last to cultivate because you can't make up what you don't know. So academic training has to precede that in order to be able to truly do it well. Okay?
Are there any specific dexterity exercises that you recommend? Maybe something beyond just abstract shapes?
Any drawing is any diligent drawing carefully done is a dexterity building exercise. This is a dexterity building exercise. Drawing a bowl of fruit is a dexterity building exercise. Working in some mediums will help to emphasize it more, like inking is a virtuoso dexterity building medium. Brush inking, quill inking, we will get to that down the road. It's a very, very, one of the most difficult mediums, but it's a medium that would definitely cultivate a superior sense of dexterity to someone who does not do it. So if you're looking to separate yourself from the masses and get better than your competition, so to speak, then you would do so by doing harder things than your competition, studying harder techniques, harder methods. A lot of these methods are seldom taught, very difficult to find information on these days because everyone's too busy in the church of what's happening now, which is digital. So they're off running, chasing digital, and they're not off inking like Joseph Clement Cole or Frazetta or Wrightson or Gibson or any of these other great artists that studied that medium diligently their whole life. Now, I don't mean drop everything and go study inking like at a feverish pace, but watercolor, inking, these are mediums that would tax your dexterity at a higher level, and as a byproduct, you get better dexterity out of doing them.
This person's 16 and drawing since about 2013, and they're wondering if they should really focus on anatomy now or worry about that later.
At 13, you say?
Well, 16.
16.
Yeah.
At 16, you could start dabbling in it. I was dabbling around, drawing some Bridgman, didn't know really what I was doing with that book. The book I'm doing, and again, this is not a sales pitch for it, but it is going to be a godsend for you guys that are having a hard time with Bridgman, because Bridgman is one of the most cryptically difficult artists to pull proper information out of. Wonderful draftsman, love him to death, but drives me nuts with the sloppiness of the drawings. So for an artist learning from that particular, I had that book when I was your age, and I didn't know what to do with it, and I had a dad that was incredibly knowledgeable and wasn't really able to tell me what to do with it. It's just a hard book to study from. So anatomy at that time would be more, drawing from Frazetta, drawing sketches of anatomical figures from the Russian drawing books, or the books that I advise all the time on from the Russians, that they just have big, large poster books of their drawings. Basically not studying probably the academia of anatomy that much yet, like the tensor fascia latae and where it connects and what it does. I mean, that kind of stuff, let's leave that for a little later. Just shape recognition, Michael Hampton, people like that are doing nice, user-friendly, drawing tutorials that are more just simple diagrammatical stuff that you're just memorizing and learning how to see something properly. Later, we can put a label to it, an academic understanding of it. Right now, I wouldn't focus too much on that. I get into a lot of life drawing classes, start drawing some nude models if possible. At that age, it's kind of hard to find places that'll let you do it from a legal standpoint. But sometimes you can. So that's my suggestion at that age is don't worry too much about it. I would say when you get 18, 19, 20 years old, you start getting into a really good school like ours or something like it, I would then start to just jump into the anatomy classes.
When working with the online school, how many hours a day do you think they should practice drawing as opposed to painting?
70-30 split, 70% drawing, 30% painting. So whatever that means for you, if you're only getting a chance to do an hour a day, 2 hours a day, just draw. There's no point. You got to get your drawing up to snuff. You got to start thinking of drawing as painting and painting as drawing, and stop thinking of them as two separate entities. They're one and the same. One's done in charcoal, which is kind of a gritty, toothy, kind of textural, it has kind of a sandpapery texture type surface. And then oil, for example, has a very silky, smooth type application surface, or the way that it goes down, the viscosity, its characteristics. So what you have to do is just start asking yourself, where are you in the process? And be honest with yourself. How good are you at drafting? A lot of people say, I'm pretty good. Just the fact that they say pretty good is enough for me to say, no, not good enough. And a lot of people just don't really know. They don't really, and so you got to be a very strong critic of your own stuff. You don't have to be hard on yourself. Well, deliberately, but you do have to not cut yourself a lot of slack. You can't just be like, oh yeah, I'm pretty good. It's like, no, that's not good enough. It needs to be better. It needs to be stronger. It needs to be more accurate. It needs to look more like that. Art is so many layers of complexity and thinking that a lot of people dumb it way down and underestimate the true difficulty of being masterful at it. And then they're kind of disappointed when they're not masterful at it. And it's like, well, it takes a long time and a lot of really foresight to get masterful at anything. And drawing and painting, if you're just getting going, I would say think about it like you can't draw enough. You can't draw enough. Now, painting, I wanted to be a painter from day one. I knew it. I went into school knowing that. So for me, I started painting right along, but I was taking 15 classes a week at the school I was in. And that's a lot of classes. And I was going home and matching that probably the same amount at home. But I was pretty fanatical. I was young. I had tons of energy. I wasn't working. My parents were helping me out. I was in school to be in school, and I took full advantage of that. Not many people are always going to have that opportunity. Okay? So if you don't have that opportunity, then you have to readjust your thinking a little bit. You have to kind of push out your date for getting good a little further than say I did. Maybe I got good in 3 years, and it's going to take you 6. Twice as long, because you're doing half as much work as I was, and maybe not quite as well thought out. I don't know what the case may be, but so we have to take each one of those into consideration when we assess what we're doing, how long, how much drawing should we do versus painting. Well, what do you want to do to me, you can't really make a living as a draftsman. There's just not a lot to do. It's just a stepping stone towards learning to paint. But it's a quick and efficient one and a cheaper one. So it's helping you to prepare you for it without having such a sting to the pocketbook, so to speak. So we want to kind of start thinking in terms of, that as well. Some people may have a better opportunity because maybe they're more, they just have more money or they come from more money or whatever. That's all fine and good. But it's a long road, and I would never count myself out, and I would always sit and go, okay, Jeff says I need to draw more. Yes, always. That'll be for the rest of your life. I'll never say stop drawing or you're done drawing, you've graduated from drawing, you don't need to draw anymore. Whenever you want to learn something and memorize it, go to drawing. It's cheaper, it's more efficient, and then let it naturally transfer over into painting. That's what we want to try to work towards, where we see them as one and the same, and we're always learning concepts that we can move back and forth between drawing and painting effortlessly. But first we need to get a language that we're fluent in. So from that standpoint, I would focus on drawing in the technique, the Riley technique or whatever technique you're in, until you're so comfortable with it that you can kind of move between the two. So I would say, when people first come to school, if they're taking 2 classes, 3 classes, take 3 drawing. If you're taking 4 classes, 3 drawing, 1 painting. 5 classes, I don't know, you could still do 3 to 2, or 4 to 1, 4 drawing, 1 painting, depending. Or you could, and so as you get up into more classes, more time, you can start to sprinkle in a little bit more. Now, if you're online, then I would say, maybe set up your week so that 3/4 of your time is spent drawing phases, and then you reward yourself with a little bit of painting once a week, twice a week, probably gouache to start with. It's a very user-friendly medium, and it was used to bridge between the charcoal and the oil for us when we were in school. So that's my take on that.
Is Alphonse Mucha a good person to study design from?
One of the best ever. I mean, only one of the best designers that's ever graced the planet. So, yeah, I mean, you couldn't pick a better designer. The guy doesn't design anything badly. I mean, I've never seen a bad design shape from him. I was lucky enough to see a show of his years ago at our local, we don't get that many great shows in San Diego, but the Balboa Museum happened to get a Mucha show where there was about 150 pieces of his. A lot of them were his fine art pieces along with his more iconic illustration type pieces. But when you sat and looked at, when I went through that show, the thing that blew me away the most is I could not, and you could get right up on him, I mean like a couple inches off of him. I couldn't find a bad knuckle, a bad fingernail, a bad indication of anything on his paintings. Everything to me seemed like it was effortless and beautifully designed, as if he had the opposite problem most of us have. He couldn't get a bad shape, whereas most of us have a very difficult time getting a good shape. He had the opposite problem. He couldn't do a bad shape. It was like not in his DNA or something. I don't know. So Mucha's a cryptic artist to me. I mean, he's one of the best designers ever, in my opinion. And he is absolutely a virtuoso, along with Leindecker. There's a bunch of them. But he in general, because of the way he worked, and Leindecker also after him, are two really powerhouse designers. And Drew Struzan came after, in that lineage, you got kind of Mucha, then you've got, so you got Mucha, Leindecker, and then Drew Struzan. And those guys are all great designers in their own right. So all people that you should probably study. I think I'm going to go ahead and take a break because we've laid in quite a bit. So you notice I've got the hat not laid in. I'm laying in opaquely, and my drawing's gone now. And it's all prima. So I either know how to draw now or I'm in deep trouble. So that's what you want to think about. Now it's going to be refining my shapes in wet paint. And that's exponentially harder than doing it in charcoal, doing it in graphite. So if you're struggling with it in graphite, you're struggling with it in charcoal, it is not going to magically become easier when you add color to it. It's only going to magnify the difficulties, okay? So just keep that in mind. I'm going to take a little break, about a 5-minute, and then we'll be back and I'll continue through on this and we'll just see how far we can get. I think it won't, maybe a couple hours to do this, 2.5 hours. But thank you for joining me, and I'll see you momentarily. All right, everybody, I'm back. I'm going to continue on this painting. We've got the head pretty much laid in, some of the beard coming in. There's still a little white here and there. It's okay. This is primarily going to be close to white. It won't be straight white. To me, we have a colder light coming from the left because you can see a little bit of blue in the rim around the hair. And as we flip over to the other side, we have like a candle light. Maybe it's a light from a fireplace or inside of maybe it's outside of a window of a house, and you have that warm incandescent light from the house coming out and hitting his face, and you have the moonlight coming from the left and hitting his hair. It's something like that. So it's very theatrical lighting, really beautifully done. I guess we'll get back into it.
One more second.
One more second.
Well, I find a question. So
oh, okay.
Figure out where I left off.
Yeah, no problem. I will just paint.
Oh, are you planning on doing inking for the online school?
Yes, I meant to do it already, but I taught it about 2 terms ago, and then I was warming up to do it online because it takes it's an art. It's a very fine art, and I don't do it as much as I used to. Practice it as much. So when I do, it takes me a little month or 2 to get back into top form with it, and then I just missed my window to do it. There was something else going on. But yeah, a lot of this stuff will be on the online. The online is probably going to be releasing content for the next foreseeable future, probably the next 5 years. And so at its finished state, it'll probably be somewhere around 1,200 hours. Right now I think we're at 600. So we're about halfway maybe. So there's a lot of meaty, really cool content that's coming. And we're getting ready to revamp a good portion of the front end of the website to make it a little more user-friendly and to fix some issues we've been having with it. Because with all tech, you end up with aside of that complexity, you end up with all kinds of stuff that has to be worked on and reworked and all that good stuff. So we're working on that, and then that's my main priority this year is getting it cleaned up. And now that it's kind of running and everything's going really well with it and the content's really good, now it's time to do some cleanup work on the site. And then, but we'll be doling out. We try to get one phase, 15-hour phase a month out, but we haven't been totally hitting that. But we've been coming close. Sometimes we'll do 2 a month to catch up. I think Perspective's coming out this month, which is going to be in the specialty area. It's not a core class. You could consider it a core class, but it's just I have to determine kind of which ones I think go into specialty and which ones go into core. And the core really is the core fundamental head drawing, figure drawing, quick sketch. No, I mean head drawing, head figure. Damn, that would be very appropriate time for a train to come through. So, in the core program, I'm focusing more on the big core concept, areas: landscape, still life, portrait, figure, both drawing and painting. As we get into specialty, we get into storyboarding, figure invention, advanced anatomy classes that are taking those general concepts and putting icing on the cake, so to speak. So they get doled out, kind of sprinkled in there, along with releasing phases of the actual core program. I slip in occasionally some specialty, so we kind of rotate. Like next month, I think I'm slotted to release Still Life Phase 3, which is gesture still life. And I have 4 already shot, but it won't be released for quite some time because we have other classes that I want to get out before that. And so I really don't think anyone online is going to be able to race ahead of the content. There's really no way that I can see that that's even possible. If someone has a very specific phase like inking that's all they want to do, then they might have to wait a couple years to go on and do it. But that's up to them. I think they're missing out on an awful lot of good information. But to each their own.
Have you ever trained a colorblind artist to be a painter? And it says they're red-green colorblind and tend to stick to drawing out of fear of painting horribly.
It's not necessary to be afraid of that. Yes, we have had colorblind. Some people haven't even told me for quite some time until quite a bit down the road. But one of my father's favorite painters is a guy called R.G. Smith. He was a aviation painter, tech painter, painted, World War II scenes and destroyers and aircraft carriers, and was just an absolutely phenomenal painter. And he was red-green colorblind. It's not uncommon it's not that uncommon. And the thing with colorblind people is that they see values incredibly well. So they may just end up being a tonalist, like Whistler or any number of people that didn't really care much for color as far as putting their stamp on it. As far as, like Monet, it was all about color. Zorn, not so much so. Could push it, but was more interested in edges and value and shape and calligraphy and design and drawing and all those good things. So if you are colorblind, I would not avoid painting. I would just have to, you'd have to systematic. I think you'd work in monochrome a lot longer. Bernard and white, De La Rue black and white, and Zorn and things like that, and just not open up your palette that much and be a really stellar tonalist, because tonalists are right up there as some of the famous painters of all time. So you don't have to be a colorist. Okay, I got a phone ringing in the back. Sorry about that. Forgot to take it outside. No worries. This is a real deal. You're just watching me in the studio doing my thing. So it'd be kind of like me just sitting at home doing a Sundblom study some Friday evening or something on my own, just trying to learn how to push color a little bit, push shape. It's fun. I mean, if you got nothing else going on, hey, why not do a nice little master study? I mean, it's always good for you. You can never do too many of them, in my opinion.
It's a person that doesn't have enough space for oil painting, and they're wondering if acrylic paints would be a bad choice to begin painting with.
I'm not a big fan. I just don't like acrylics. I never have. There's been some beautiful stuff done in them. One of my favorite painters, Bob Kuhn, who was a Western painter that painted a lot of animal stuff. Bob Kuhn, Kuhn. Yeah, look him up, man. He's stellar. But he was primarily just used acrylic his whole career, and did some oils too, and was quite good at those as well. But for some reason, he just always loved acrylic. And you know, his paint prices were up in the $150,000 a painting or something. I don't mean to bring that up because I don't. The money part of it is one of my least favorite aspects of art. It's a necessary evil, and you do have to make a living. I understand that, so we do have to talk about it. But it's just not very fun. It's not what we get into art to talk about, really. But a lot of times I say that from the standpoint that a lot of people say that acrylics never really get their fair respect or whatever. Well, for Bob, it worked quite fine for him. So acrylic is kind of a plasticky medium. It kind of has a weird textural plasticky feel to me, and I just don't like the way it feels going down. But if you have to work with that, I would probably work with water-based oils like Holbein or makes a good one. If you have an issue with like you're working in a small space and you don't want to breathe the fumes or you don't want to do any of that, then you can always try water-based oils. Any of that kind of stuff could work. So yeah, you could do it. I mean, you could do the online class digitally if you want. Just tailor it to digital. I don't see why it would matter really. I don't know. I've got phones going off everywhere. It sounds like I don't know what's going on.
If you weren't doing a demo, would you let the underpainting dry? And what's the purpose of the wash?
The wash is simply to key the painting, meaning start to take a diluted version of what you're seeing and put it over the painting in order to get basically sections of the painting keyed to the kind of general vicinity of where you want them. Then you fine tune them and you build opaque passages on top of that. Sometimes you allow that underpainting to come through. In his painting style, he's not letting a lot of underpainting come through. He's really a wet into wet thick painter. So he's letting no underpainting come through, whereas in other painters will use underpaintings in very strategic manners. So it's just a way to kind of, would I let it dry? No. Not in this painter's style. I would be going right into it and going at it because he's a wet into wet painter. He paints these as if he was painting this Santa Claus sitting in his studio. He doesn't.
Oh, what sound?
Okay, how's it going?
Sound issue.
Okay. So I don't know, we might be having some sound issues, I'm not sure, other than people talking on a phone behind me. Can they hear me?
No, it doesn't look like they can. I don't know why. Nothing's changed.
Can they see me?
Yeah.
Okay, well that's good enough for now.
I don't know why. It's set up. Is this? It's receiving. Why isn't this working? That's bizarre.
You getting it fixed or?
No, here, I'm gonna switch it to camera audio
Okay.
because I don't know why. I don't understand why it suddenly stopped working. Let's see if that works.
Hello, hello, hello.
No, nothing.
Just
Why
put it,
isn't
just
it
put it
working?
on camera. Let's call it a
There it
day.
goes. Oh, there. Okay.
Nice.
Sorry about that, everybody. Something's going on with the audio system we have right now. Probably won't sound as good, but it's on the camera audio right now. So.
Yeah, so I'll talk a little louder, and sorry about that. We're trying some new equipment, and as usual, it always has issues. So, you know, the painting should be nice. I'll talk loud enough to where you can hear me, so we'll keep working on it and get it better and better each time. Appreciate your patience. At least the price is right, so should be fine. But yeah, we'll keep working on making it better and better.
Well, since we have sound now, maybe you could talk about the colorblind thing again.
Did no one hear that?
I don't think so.
Okay, so we talked about colorblind earlier, and I think that got cut out when we had a little mic error here. So what I'll talk about is one of my dad's favorite painters, R.G. Smith, which was an aviation painter, someone you should look up. He's one of my dad's favorites, and he was red-green colorblind. So being colorblind is not an excuse for not painting. Usually they'll be very good tonalists because they see and value way better than most people and more keen. So you're going to have a real advantage in the arena of value rendition. So hang your hat more on monochromatic palettes, palettes like the Zorn palette, palettes that don't require pushing a lot of color. Zorn wasn't that interested in color. He was okay in it. I mean, he was really good in it, but he didn't hang his hat on it like Monet or something. So if, you know, colorblind, yes, I have worked with people that are colorblind, and they usually, like I said, they usually are stellar with values, which is really a huge portion of even doing color in the first place. Because a lot of my color is fairly abstract. It's based on nailing the values, getting the values working strong, then you can just murder it. I mean, you can go do whatever you want, really. I mean, there's thousands of combinations of colors that probably look better than what you're seeing, that you could play around with and inject into. Most of the best colorists are heavy inventors of color. They're not as literal as you would maybe think at first glance. They're pushing, pulling color concepts constantly and continuously. Go ahead, Brett.
I'm trying to figure out what else we missed. A whole lot of comments about how we have no sound, but now it works. Which is good.
Yeah, sorry about that, you guys. We'll get it under control here one of these millennia.
Does squinting help with seeing proper shapes?
Squint to see value, open your eyes to see color. Shapes, you kind of need your eyes open to see shape well, I think. Although a little bit of squinting can help to, you know, help remove some of the superficial kind of obnoxious things that can catch your attention. So if you have a tendency to be very literal and stuff, squinting can help a little bit, if you know, to simplify down large masses and shapes and allow you to see the bigger picture a little bit more easily.
Yeah, still looking for another question.
That's okay. A nice break for me. You don't have to follow any particular sequence with the questions. You can jump around, you can miss some, you can, you know, you don't always have to hit every one of them.
Sorry, well, I can't go back to where I left off, and then
That's
everything
okay.
got replaced with no sound comments.
Okay,
So we might be out of questions. Hang on, I'll get more.
so I'm just kind of moving through. I'm working up. Now, he's not really a stereotypical, you know, like in my opinion, tile painter, but anytime you see shapes that are specific, it's kind of tiling to me. Tiling is just shape recognition painting. So whenever you see that, I'm kind of probably got my head in the camera there while I go. I got all my brushes over to the left there. Got a couple different kinds of white that I'm using. I've got some sticky white, which is Gamblin's flake white replacement, which I kind of like. It has a very, again, a little bit drier, stickier feel. Then I've got, I think I've got a, I think it's a Sennelier or something. There's one that's really gooey. It could be even a Da Vinci. I'm not sure. Can't remember. doesn't really matter. It's just different kinds of textural whites. You know, like if I want a white to go down more sticky so that I can pull it and get a certain edge, then I don't want it to be too gooey. I want it to be more of a more dry. Now over here, the blue looks like it might be a phthalo or a Prussian, and I don't have that. I have ultramarine, so I don't think I'll be able to get exactly that. I have a little bit of cobalt there. I can mix the cobalt with a little bit. Oh, maybe I do have it. No, never mind. We're good. I did find a little bit of that of phthalo or Prussian over there in the corner from a past painting. So with this blue light coming from the moon, or you know, I'm pretty sure it's moonlight. Just hitting and his strokes are really, he builds them up and then he tries to go for those one-time Sargent-y flicks of the wrist / strokes that really you can only get in a pretty not one foul swoop, but in a sequence of strokes that aren't too pretentious. And that's the beauty of Sargent. I mean, he's just such a surgical layer maestro. There has been very few that can even hold a candle to his ability to layer.
Could you talk a little bit about connecting warm and cool values and colors?
Warm and cools, I work between them more visually and optically. Like I look at this and say, that looks warmer to me, it has more yellow, this has more blue. When you start asking yourself, okay, how do you compare whether something's warm or cool? That is a loaded question, and one that is almost impossible to answer, with the exception of telling you what area that you're trying to compare it to. Am I comparing it to this side? Is this cold compared to this? Of course. Within this range, this gray here is colder than this, but warmer than this. So everything's, what are we looking at this gray next to this or next to that? Because it's one or the other. So when you're thinking of color, you need to think in more broad terms about relative concepts, not so much literal concepts. When you get literal with color, we get into trouble. Because people start, and then they start blaming all kinds of stuff. Well, you didn't teach me color properly. And it's like, no, you're just trying to make something out of it that it's not. Now, I don't mean to make it vague. Some things in art, you're just going to have to be okay with it being somewhat mysterious. Now, there may be someone out there throughout history or at some time that could explain it in such a way that you would just get it and it would be so easy. I don't find it very often. It's kind of like trying to explain reincarnation or trying to explain enlightenment, or being, or something like these concepts where it's like, how do you explain that concept intellectually? It doesn't even have really a place. So color, to me, is kind of in that vein of, it's such a pliable science of the sciences that we have to work with. Edge, not so much so. Value, not so much so. Color is one of the few areas that you're going to have an opportunity to put your fingerprint on and stamp on it. Look at, Jeffrey Hine. Dude just pushes color like nobody's business. I mean, he's all over the place with it. And is it correct? No. Is it 100% accurate? No. Is it better than accurate? Yes, in my opinion. So I like to look at artists like John Asaro, Jeffrey Hine, these guys, because they're pushing the envelope. I push the envelope a lot in my paintings. And a lot of people like that. Some people hate it. You can't please everybody. You're going to have some die-hard, ultra-accurate painter that's going to be all up in arms about what you're saying, and it's insulting their, taking it personally. And I think the best thing to say would be, don't take it personally. I mean, color is one of our few areas that we don't have to make into a complete uptight thing. So let's try not to do that. Let's leave a little bit of mystery with it. Let's have some fun with it. If you can hang out with other good painters that paint color well, that's where you're going to learn most of color, is by being around good colors. If you don't have that luxury, then maybe I can be that for you. Especially as I get into more advanced levels of teaching. Right now I'm still stuck down in fundamental land, doing just really rigidly fundamental teaching that I don't even work like that anymore, nor do I really even want to. But I had to go through it in order to get where I went, so it's not prudent for me to tell you to jump past it and then create an online program only doing fun stuff that's fun for me, that is where I'm at now. That would be incredibly irresponsible of me, I think. And there are a lot of people doing that. putting out content that really is way too advanced for the people that they're trying to educate. And it's not going to do them a lot of good until they can get their foundational components put in place, from what I've seen.
Is there a difference between shape and form?
Shape and form. Shape and form. It depends. I mean, like forms have shapes. What's the form? The form is the tip of the nose. It's the earlobe. It's the eye socket. It's the labial furrow. I mean, these are all forms. So, does a form have a shape? Yeah. Yeah, and you want to probably design that shape according to what you see, what you know, and what you wish you saw. So we're always going to be thinking about, form. Everything's a form on the body. Elbow, nipple, lateral malleolus. I mean, these are all forms. How we design these forms, how we knit them together with other forms, that's the magic. That's where it gets difficult, because then you're having to, when you change part of the equation of what you're seeing, other parts of the equation change with it. It's like you can't change it and not have it affect 5 different things. So I'm putting a little bit of, I think it's a cool, like kind of, I can't remember what that, it's a Winsor Newton color, but it's just a really nice, it'll come to Red Rose Deep, I think, or something. Red Rose Deep, I think it's something like that. It's just that, you could use, I don't know, you probably could use some alizarin. Alizarin would be a little warmer than that. You could probably use rose madder, any number of things you could probably use. So again, I'm just hitting a little bit of that cool next to the core shadow. Now the core shadow on his face runs up along the crow's feet, these little cut lines in when he's smiling, and he's an older guy, so he's got kind of round apple cheeks with these little crow's feet from age lines, that are kind of, playing out their part in his life, his age. Any question?
You ever used any walnut oil-based paint? And if so, are they a good alternative if proper ventilation isn't available?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan. I mean, I know a lot of artists that have switched over to it for whatever reason. They're chemically sensitive to something, or they just are a little nervous about the toxicity of their paints. And I wouldn't be the best one to probably ask about that. I mean, I've used it. I don't like it. Doesn't lay down washes well, so I don't like it for that reason. I almost have to use regular oil to lay my washes down, and then I can switch over to using walnut. But I've seen people use it with great success. Morgan Wessling uses it quite a bit, I believe. I don't know if he still is, but I know he did switch over, I believe, for a while. So, to each their own. I think, again, I'd probably use water-based oils before I'd switch over to using walnut. But I think, again, it's just, these are very personal things that you're just going to have to weigh them based on your own, interests. Because, again, you're going to ask 10 different artists, and 10 different artists are going to give you 10 different answers, and some are going to be, you must use walnut oil, or otherwise you'll die tomorrow. And other ones are going to be like, yeah, don't worry about it, come on. I think you want to be a conscientious painter, but not so much so. And I run the gamut with getting hypochondria and just kind of thinking, I'm always worrying about something. But in painting, I figure, the food I eat is probably going to kill me quicker than the cadmiums I'm using. I mean, what's in the food? The hormones and the GMOs and the genetic, that's the stuff that's going to do you in, not the fact that you painted a little bit with some turpentine or something. I mean, I don't think that's going to be the capper, but that's just me personally.
For people that have trouble getting the correct value, is there anything they can do to help improve that? You have to learn to be very careful. It's like when you were learning how to do 1 + 1 = 2. I mean, how did you learn that? You sat down and you did 1 + 1 = 3, and your teacher gave you an F, or sat and yelled at you, or whatever. I don't know. And then you slowly got it. So when you're looking at values, cast drawing, it can be very helpful because the values don't change and the head's not bobbing up and down and doing weird things. So you could do some cast drawing. Longer studies from the bark plates would not be a bad call. if you're really struggling with that, I think that could be a good one. You need having a good eye around, if possible, a teacher where you can rent their eyeballs for a while. When you're taking classes with a good teacher, what you're really doing is renting their eyes until your eyes can see like their eyes. Now that could be a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. It's impossible to say, but their eyes can see are calibrated properly, and they were calibrated quite probably in the same manner by somebody who knew what they were doing. So over time, what you want to do is you want to start finding those people. Now, if you're using someone like me online, then you're going to be trying to copy. We did pretty good repros. Some are better than others. I mean, they're good enough to work from for sure, and they're not going to do any damage to you. That's for sure. But again, there is no substitute for being in a class with a teacher that's awesome, that can sit you down and work with you day in and day out until your eye can see values correctly. But most of you, quite frankly, are probably not going to have that opportunity. You don't live where there is a teacher like that. There aren't that many of them. And you can't move to San Diego, or New York, or Florence, or one of those places where you might find Florence Academy or Jacob Collins or something like that teaching, where you could go and really get your teeth into someone sitting with you on a regular basis and helping your eyes see properly. So you're going to have to do it the old-fashioned hard way, like throughout history a lot of people have had to do, and that's, find a good program. If ours is that, then great. If it's some other one, that's great. There's a lot of good ones out there now. So start looking around and find good people to hang out with if possible, at community colleges, in your local, classes there. Try to just start finding people you can link yourself to. And you gotta, some people just have some people just do not see well. I mean, they just don't calibrate well. They don't have good dexterity. Their eye doesn't function very good. That's hard, it's like saying, you kind of have shoddy dexterity, but you want to be a professional basketball player. It's like, well, I don't know, I mean, not everybody can be that good dexterous, and I'm not trying to deter any of you or anything. I'm just saying we've got to look at our own personal genetic limitations as well as our strengths, and we have to be honest with ourselves. And then we have to work around. We don't stop or quit. We have to work around those issues. So if you're having trouble seeing values, I would say continue to do very accurate renditions from good draftsmen and good artists that you like. Try to match the values as close as you possibly can. If you have a good eye to bounce it off of, then go to that person and say, okay, I just spent 20 hours on this drawing. What do you think? I'm really concerned about my values. Can you help, just let me know whether you think they're in the ballpark or not. If that person has a good eye, they should be able to look at it very quickly and say, no, you're too punchy here. Your values are way discordant. They're out of harmony here. Think of values and edges kind of like being notes that are off in music. When somebody hits a bad shrill note, your ears hurt. You can feel it. You go, oh man, that was bad. Well, when you do that as an artist, same thing. You look at it and go, oh man, that hurts my eyes. Damn, that's off. That's way too colorful. That's way too bright. That's way too dark. That's way too punchy. You should have an innate ability to start sensing that. If you don't, then we have bigger problems, right? That means there's some other disconnect somewhere intellectually, logically, maybe I don't know, there's something going on. But normally you can look at a drawing and say, damn, that just doesn't look right. It looks too punchy, the values look too, like I'll walk by some people's drawings in my class, I can't even see there's a drawing on the paper, they're so subtle. That's a problem. You got to get some conviction. You got to start putting down some values I can actually see. And then I walk to the next person, and the guy's pounding it in like it was, breaking the pencil and just grinding it and cutting through the paper. And that person's so heavy-handed that they need to really take note from the person to the left of them and mellow out. And the person to the left of them needs to take note of the directness of the other person, and both of them need to share a little bit of what they don't have. And that's kind of how it works, So hopefully that helped. I hope that was a good explanation.
Is there an advantage to painting flat like you're doing now as opposed to using an easel?
No, I just can't. I can't. Again, everything demoing is handicapped. I mean, when I do all these videos for the online, it's like tying one arm behind your back. You can't stand up. You can't stand in your favorite posture. You can't use your choke ups the way you normally do. Everything has to be adjusted accordingly, and that's been difficult. But it's part of being a consummate professional, adapting and overcoming whatever needs to be overcome in order to get a good result. And that would be like if Photoshop broke and all of a sudden you had a job due, what are you going to do? Well, you better pick up a piece of paper and a canvas and hammer it out, or gouache or something. Things happen, things break, things malfunction. You can just see it tonight with, our sound's not working, or this is not working. We have to improvise very quickly. Is it ever going to be perfect? No, not that I've ever seen. There's always something going wrong. So the better you are, the more you can adapt. And adaptability is one of the strongest skill sets you could ever develop as a painter, an artist, a person in general. The ability to adapt and overcome in any situation is priceless. You can't put a value on that.
Can you talk about the green smudgy thing happening at the edge of the beard? It's so lovely.
Yeah, if you look at the reference subtly, there's a little bit of phthalo green running. Now I've got too much here, and I'll get rid of some of that and just leave a tiny little sliver of it. But I think it helps. I do it a lot of times when I paint chrome. I put a little kiss of phthalo along the chrome, and then when the white hits it, it becomes this like almost neon electric little shimmer on the edge of the chrome that really just adds, to me, it adds a whole different layer of cool look to that illusion of chrome. So I think he's doing a similar thing. Obviously, that's not something you would see if you were standing there in reality. It just wouldn't exist. That's what he wish he saw, right? So that part of that equation, part of what I see, part of what I know, part of what I wish I saw. That's what he wish he saw. And that's where artists have that little bit of magic they can put into the painting, a little bit of themselves, a little bit of their own opinion. We have very little room to do that as representational painters. Abstract painters can run hog wild because they don't have to answer to anybody, and nothing matters really. It's whatever they want to call it, whatever they want to say it is. That's an incredible luxury to have. I think it's almost so much so that I don't like it, because it's too much of a luxury. It's like, it's not even challenging when you don't have any limitations to what you do, to me. So when we're working, we have to be a little more careful, a little more respectful of what it is we're painting. We can still slip in a little bit of our own opinion, but very little compared to other art forms, other genres. So that's why I say don't take color and beat it into something uptight when we already have to be uptight in 3/4 of what we do. Why would you want to make that last thing that you're given as a fun thing into the same thing as everything else? That's my take on it. I'm like, I want to keep something for myself, something fun, something entertaining, enjoyable. And so that's going to be color for me and things like that. So just take that with a grain of salt. Some of you will say, I want to be way more literal. I don't like that at all. Well, that's okay. Just let it wash off your back like water off of a duck's back. Okay, so I'm just kind of laying in a little bit now of the dark of the red outfit. I'm not doing doing anything fancy. I'm not being totally, careful. I'm doing it with a bristle, which is scratching off the masonite, which again, a lot of people say, why don't you just do that with a sable? It'd be a lot more efficient, and you'd be right. So I'm going to do that. Go over and grab, it's a brand new one. Damn, it hasn't even, and I just completely ruined it with phthalo, or not phthalo, but that thing will be stained for life now. I just used alizarin on it. So again, I just need to get it covered first, and some of this paint is fair, alizarin's a very transparent, transparent color. I'm not sure what he's using to get that. I got a cad red medium here, but that ain't doing it, and I can add a little black to it, but then it makes it too brownish. So there's something he's using, a red that I don't have, and that's okay. I just make a mental note of that. So I'll try to match it as close as I can. But is it going to be a deal breaker if I can't hit it 100% perfect? No, not for me. It isn't. Maybe for someone else. But I'm more interested in just getting the brushmanship. He's really, if I was studying Sundblom like I am tonight, it would be for really brushmanship. His ability to get these nice, beautiful, silky, kind of cool. Excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold, so I'm sorry I'm kind of hoarse and coughing a lot and sniffling, and I don't mean to be annoying, but it's just been getting over it.
They're wondering about how to approach the curriculum for the online school, and it says because some of the core classes like head phase 3 and 4 are really far down there, should it take like 3 or 4 years to get to head phase 4?
Head drawing or head painting, or I'm not sure, but well, yeah, I mean, if you look at like the core program alone, like just take, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of head drawing. phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of figure drawing, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of figure painting, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of still life painting, so on and so forth. Each one of those classes is kind of equivalent to a 10-week course at our school. And most of those courses are taken many times, not just once. They're taken 4 or 5 times over 5-6 years. So head drawing at our school, to get really good at it, you take it 10 times over 5 years. That's 10 times, same structure, same everything, different models, different teachers maybe teaching it. So online, you would not probably take it 10 times, but you might take it 2 or 3 times over a couple of years. You might take it and then a year later go back and do a refresher course. Maybe the first time you went through it took you 2 months to get through it or a month, but you were doing it along with figure drawing. You were doing it along with some painting as well. So I would suggest having a bunch of classes going at the same time, but within reason. Just like you would if you were in our curriculum at our school, you would take head drawing, figure drawing, quick sketch, Riley painting, and plein air painting, right? That might be your semester. So you're taking some landscape classes, you're taking some figure classes, figure drawing, you're taking some head drawing, all at the same time. And you do that every semester, and you're there for years getting good at these different disciplines. Well, online it's not much different. I mean, you would start and again write up a schedule for yourself and sit down and say, okay, I'm going to do head drawing phase 1 on Monday mornings, and every Monday morning I watch the head drawing phase 1 video, and then on Tuesday I do the exercise, and then I go to Wednesdays I do figure drawing phase 1, and on Thursdays I do the exercise. On Fridays I go into a class at my local community college and I apply some of the knowledge. Then you say, okay, so that's a logical progression, and then I throw in on the weekend a little bit of gouache painting just for fun, because I just killed myself doing all this pick and shovel work during the week, and I want to have some fun. I want to reward myself for doing this grunt work, and you do it that way. But in order to get through a phase, then, if you're only doing head once a week and it's a 15-hour phase, just 15-hour video alone, plus doing the exercises 1 or 2 times probably, because you're not going to do it perfectly. Yeah, it might take you a month to get through, or a month and a half to get through head drawing phase 1. But you might also, at the same time, be getting through figure drawing phase 1 and gouache phase 1 and a couple other ones. So you're doing all. So in 3 months, you might get through 3 or 4 phases. But there's 25, 30 phases, right? So if you take into consideration thinking of the core program, not the specialty program at all. We're not even talking about perspective, composition, color theory, all these other ones that you're going to want to do numerous times down the road. You're looking at that core program probably being similar to a bachelor's program in college, 2 to 3 years. 2 to 3 years to get through just that core program. And then when you get into the specialty program, you're still going to want to go back and refresh yourself with going back through some of those phases, to keep getting better at it. But then you're also going to be pushing into other areas, building portfolios, starting to work professionally, but still having to go back and maintain skills. Even though you're working now doesn't mean that you're good enough to not have to study anymore or go back and refresh yourself on anatomy. So this is how the logic of building a curriculum study course happens. You have to be very, and some people will just look at that and go, I had no idea that that's what it was like. And I would say, well, now you do. It's a lot more work than you had probably anticipated. But again, we're talking about training upper echelon painters, not dabblers and people that, it's fine if you want to do that. It's still incredibly beneficial to get to work with this caliber of information and training. Why would you not want to, even if you were just going to do it for fun? But for those of you who are going to go hang your hat on it and try to become a Haddon Sundblom and try to become a Frazetta and try to go out and work at Pixar and DreamWorks and work on the next Star Wars lineage series and do concepting for it, you're going to want to really dot your I's and cross your T's, because the people that you're going to be competing with, that's what they're doing. And you don't really have an option if you want to compete with them. You can say, well, they're just too fanatical and I don't want to do that. Then you're not going to be competing with them, so don't compete with them. Or you'll say, damn, I'm going to have to do what they're doing because that's what they're doing and that's how good they are, and I got to be that good too, so I'm going to have to jump on board and go for it. That's where you kind of find yourself at some point. And then you have to determine, in that big picture, where do you want to fit into it? Is it too much work for you? If it is, then just do it for fun. The problem occurs is when you have unrealistic expectations, you want to be one of those people working at Pixar, but you don't want to do the hard work involved. Then that's just, to me, crazy, because it's just like, there's no really explanation. I mean, it's just, no, it's not gonna, it's craziness. So, you know, it's all doable. And don't don't sell yourself short. You're capable of doing any of the things I just mentioned, I'm sure. With the hard work, guidance, and wherewithal, you could surprise yourself immensely. Now, this background needs, next break, I'm gonna get a fan brush and kind of clean that up a little bit. It's starting to come together pretty good. It has the feel. It needs a lot of tightening up. It needs a lot of cleaning up. We've got the buttons to do and that little thing. It's gonna be very difficult. That's a little thesis project in and of itself right there. Any more questions before I take a little break here?
How important is sketchbooking in becoming proficient in translating ideas from the imagination to the page?
Really good question. I just talked to my dad about this last night. We went and saw the new Star Wars, and I won't say anything because I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but I really enjoyed it. I had a great time. I grew up on Star Wars. I saw the first one when I was 7 years old, and it just made such an indelible mark in my psyche that I have to say that it was probably one of the most influential moments of my life as an artist or a creative person was seeing the first Star Wars. So I have sketchbooking. To me, we were talking about it because we're getting ready to lay down sketchbooking online, and I'm doing a fourth of it. My dad's doing a fourth of it. Eric's doing a fourth of it. Lucas is doing a fourth of it. So it is going to be a stellar kick butt phase. I mean, it is going to be awesome. But it is like your diary. It's like absolutely one of the most important things that you can do on a regular basis. It's where you formulate your ideas. It's where future paintings come from. It's where your personality starts to form. It's where your opinions start to take shape. I can't say enough about it, and I don't do it as much as I should. So I've gone through periods where I've done copious amounts of it. You should always have a sketchbook. I know some people that almost do it to a fault, but it's kind of hard to do too much of it. But there are other things you have to also balance it with. So to stop everything in just sketchbook, I think that's irresponsible. Everything's in balance. We have to look at this very much like a spiritual practice and think of it like following the razor's edge. We're balancing huge concepts, trying to become proficient in so many areas. And if we stop and bog down in one area at the detriment of 5 others, is that really smart training? Or is that careless and irresponsible? I would go with the later. But sketchbooking, yes, it is absolutely essential, especially for conceptors, visual development artists, anyone who wants to bring something to the table that's uniquely theirs. I love looking at people's sketchbooks. Whenever I go to the Comic-Con, I always pick up 5 or 6 sketchbooks of people that I like. Paul Bonner or any of these guys where they're putting out a little sketchbook of their ideas. It allows me to see a glimpse into their thinking, a glimpse into their psyche, who they are as an artist, way more so than their finished paintings. So I'm a big fan of it. We will be doing an incredible phase in it, but again, that's slotted to be shot probably in a month or so, and then it's going to be 5 or 6 months before it comes out. But just have fun going through what's already there, and just know that all this cool stuff's coming, and you want to be prepared to take advantage of it when it does come. If you go into sketchbooking and you can't even do some gestural sketching like phase 3 figure quick sketch, you need to be back in phase, get that figure quick sketch out of the way before you get into hardcore sketchbooking, because you can't sketchbook stuff if you don't have basic perspective down. You can't freehand do your perspective. In order to do that, you need to do the academic perspective first, then work your way into, outdoor sketching and things like that. And all that stuff, again, right now you're seeing the program, if you're in it right now, is a unfinished, unresolved thing right now. I haven't gotten it fully completed. When it's fully completed, it'll be a fully realized program. And you will see it as such, and you'll see people just going through it very efficiently. Right now, you're going to have to be a little more patient. There's plenty to spend your time on, and you need to do it anyway. So I would just suggest going through those phases and getting them out of the way, the pick and shovel ones, while we're working on these really fun ones that everybody would want to be doing. But nobody should be doing them. It's like you shouldn't be jumping into my dad's composition class before you know how to draw a figure well. I mean, what are you going to compose? Poorly drawn figures? I mean, that's not going to work. So we can't get the cart in front of the horse. We can, but we shouldn't. So what we're going to try to do is walk you through it. And ultimately, like I said, my goal is to create a trajectory curriculum for every major, well, not every major area, but all the major areas. Landscape painting, fine art, portrait commission, narrative painting, concepting, visual development, background, landscape, storyboarding, animation, all these. Well, because they all share the same common denominator, have to be a stellar draftsman to do any of that stuff. Without that, you're not going to be doing it. So people study animation. You better be able to draw animals, people, trains, planes, figures out of your head beautifully before you start to learn how to animate them. Because what are you going to animate? Poorly drawn figures? I mean, I guess if you're, certain areas of animation like South Park or something where it's just so crude that it's not even about the animation. It's about the writing, and the humor, and the animation is just kind of a side thing. It's totally funny as can be, but it's not going to be demanding that you're that good of a draftsman, right? So, but that's not what we're talking about. I mean, we're talking about, executing for Pixar or something, or one of these other companies that does high level finish stuff, as well. Okay, so break time. I'm going to take a little break, come back, start ratcheting down. We got a couple more sessions left before we're done. Okay, I'm back. I'm going to just go around the background here. I've got a fan brush. I had to go find one. But I'm also just going to kind of get this dark, nice and matte and to pop that head forward. So it's straight black right now, right? Straight black that I'm using. I might slip a little burn umber in there. We've got a little of that phthalo that I put in there. See, right now, and again, this is not, it's kind of a faux version of how he would have painted it, but at the end product, as long as it looks, like I said, looks like one of his paintings, I'm going to be very happy with it. But if I was doing this all prima, I would be standing number one, which would help immensely, because I choke up differently when I stand. And I can't do that sitting down, really. But it's looking fine, especially for talking and all that kind of stuff. I feel pretty good about it. Any questions you want to?
Is training at Watts a good idea for someone wanting to be in animation?
I think so. You'll get arguments. I mean, there are better schools as far as technical animation for sure. We don't get into like the stuff that you would get over at like Cal Arts or something, but Cal Arts doesn't probably train the way we do in strong figurative and fundamental classes either, from what I understand. So each school has its fortes. You can't be good at everything. And I think the schools that try to be good at everything fail miserably. So you're going to find like Noman's going to be good at certain things, digital application, 3D programs and ZBrush and all that kind of stuff, and digital, applying this stuff to digital applications. We're not going to do any of that because I have no interest in teaching that stuff. People can learn it over at Noman or somewhere else. That's not what we hung our hat on. Our strength is in fundamentals, core. So if something, before anyone goes and chooses to do anything, animation, I don't care, any specialty area, they should spend a number of years training diligently in fundamentals. That's where you would come to a school like ours. And then you might find that you can learn the other stuff on your own through tutorials, online classes, things of that sort. Or you may find at that time you want to try to get a scholarship to go to one of the bigger schools, or you want to use your fundamental skill development that you got with us. And I just helped a girl do that. She came out from Switzerland. She was about 18, and she spent time with us training for, her goal was to get into wrangling, and she wants to be an animator. And I said, well, that's a short window. We got 6 months to ramp you up from ground zero to getting in that school. And sure enough, I said, you're going to do it, but they're not going to teach you the strong fundamentals like maybe as strong as we would. So I really encouraged her to get her fundamentals with us before she went off to that school. And she's doing great over there now. She likes it. She's doing great. But we really helped prepare her to go do that. So I think from that standpoint, she did exactly what you're thinking of doing. She came first to get her core classes. She could have spent a couple more years with us, and it wouldn't have hurt her at all before she went off to school. But it just worked out that that's the way she had to do it. So I think it was a really smart move on her part, and it's paying off really well for her. So I'm very happy when that happens like that. So yes, I do think it would be a very good school for someone who wants to go into animation, but not to learn animation, but to learn the skills that will allow you to take your animation and do something very special with it.
Are you using a tiling technique for your paintings?
I am a little bit right now, but like I said, anytime you're having to design a shape and the shapes have to look good, you're basically tiling, because it's really just shape recognition painting. in my opinion. That's just making shapes that look good and knitting them together. When I say knit together, it's how they come together, how those shapes butt up next to each other. Because, you know, you can't just, every shape is not, there's no shape on this painting that's independent of other shapes. They're all affecting each other, and they all have to be looked at both from the standpoint of the whole and also from the individual pieces. And if you neglect either one of those, you run the risk of sacrificing the painting, and not in a good way. So we want to make sure that we understand the importance of these with and against the form, paint strokes, pressure sensitivity with the brush. These are things that nobody can really teach you. I mean, they can show you, they can talk about it. They're butting up next to very, very, very ethereal concepts that are very difficult. And that's why just even attempting to explain it, I have huge amount of respect for anybody that's even willing to go there and try to put their hat in the ring and say, okay, I'm going to try to explain to you how to invent anatomy that's attractive looking, or I'm going to teach you how to do wonderful color. I mean, this is like trying to teach somebody how to taste without them being able to taste. It's like, okay, I'm going to try to talk to you about what garlic tastes like, but you're not going to get to taste it. I'm just going to have to try to tell you what it tastes like. It's like, that is so hard to do, you know, or what salt tastes like if no one's ever had it. Never tasted salt. Now I'm going to explain to you in words what salt is. There really is no words to explain it. Words are simply signposts. You know, you could talk about, again, the taste of that forever, but when the person finally tastes it, then they really know what it's about. It's very similar in painting. I can sit and talk all day about edges and values and shapes and design, but to show you real time in front of you is the real deal. That's where the real learning is going to take place. That's where the real, oh, okay. But even once you say, oh, okay, it's still a very ethereal understanding. That understanding is open for maneuvering and manipulating and idealizing and changing all the time. So there is no really ever hanging your hat on, oh, I've got it. No, you got it in the context of that particular situation. The next situation will be different. The next one will be different. The next one will be different. So you can never become complacent, in my opinion. You can never just say, oh, I've got it, I'm good now. No, you've got it that time, but now you've got it every time you've got to get it, and every time it's going to be a little different. So you always have to be thinking, you always have to be on your toes. That's why it's such a fun thing to learn how to do. That's why it's so compelling. If you can get past the frustration of trying to just learn the fundamentals, it'll free you up to be able to venture into these concepts I'm casually talking about, which are really the marrow of the creative process. It's the lifeblood, or the life pulse of the soul of painting is in somewhere in that range that is very elusive to talk about, very elusive to explain verbally.
Do you have any tips on painting children versus adults with the use of color, edges, and shapes?
Yeah, that's not, I mean, kids are kind of goofy looking, you know, they're awesome, but I mean, they got their features, they haven't grown into them, they've got, you know, their eyes are huge, they're cute because, you know, like when you look at Disney and DreamWorks, they always make people with these huge eyes because they're cute. They look like really cute kids. And the kids have these just ridiculously large eyes. So when you're drawing, you know, kids, it's an art in and of itself because you're drawing, it's almost like doing caricature. You're drawing a distortion of what people really look like, and they haven't grown into their cranial mass, and they haven't grown into certain areas of their face. So their bones are still moving and growing and morphing. So kids are hard, but fun, beautiful, really fun. I don't have my own kids, but I love painting them. I wish I could paint them more. I just don't have that much access to them. But every time I have, I've done really nice paintings, and I've really enjoyed doing it. But it is like caricature. You've got to basically caricature out, and again, the way to do that efficiently is to come to it with incredible knowledge, so that you can basically know what you're distorting. If you don't know your anatomy on an adult, drawing a little kid where you're trying to distort that information can be really humbling and difficult, you know. So I would just say do your due diligence on your features and facial expressions and learning how to draw proper heads from Loomis and all these different people, and then you could start venturing into doing little kids because they're hard, man. They're little thesis problems, you know.
You talked a little bit about Sargent. Can you talk more about Sargent's technique and what separates that from other artists?
Again, Sargent is no different than Sundblom here. Almost the exact same painter. One of them maybe just a little more gifted in certain ways. But I would say that his edge work is not that far off of Sargent's personally. But Sargent was probably more consistent, painted. I don't know. You know, I wouldn't. You know, it's hard to say who's better. You know, Sargent or Frazetta or Sargent or Jerome or Bouguereau. But Sargent was one of the best alla prima direct painters of all time. That means, you know, he had a very systematic approach for building up a painting. It was very, very, very strict and uncompromising. From what I understand, if he was, you know, doing a nice painting, for most people they would be throwing, you know, a party. But if it wasn't perfectly sequentially layered the way he wanted, he would scrub it down, you know, it'd be like first and goal, and he would scrub it, you know, and start over. Maddening for the artist and for the sitter, I'm sure. But because he was so famous and able to paint so well, people would stomach it and deal with it. But in today's, so when you look at Sargent's ability to paint like that, it was somehow a combination, in my opinion, of OCD probably combined with the right teacher at the right time that beat into him this sequence. You literally have to almost electric shock somebody into doing that unless their brain is wired in such a way that they're so anal and so procedurally wired that they would paint it that. I could not paint that way, I don't think. I mean, I can mimic it to some degree, but man, I'm not wired that way. That ship's done sailed decades ago. I'm too lazy. I've developed too many bad habits to paint in that kind of strict, ridiculously strict manner. And it doesn't quite sound all that fun to me, to tell you the truth. But man, the great work that he left behind for all of us to admire, he is one of the most, in my opinion, unbelievable layering technicians of all time. Just like Muka's one of the all-time best designers. Who designs better shapes, Muka or Sargent? Well, arguably Muka, but you know, Sargent had his own way of designing and Frenching together and knitting together incredibly beautiful transitions of edge and shape. So they're kind of both maestros of design. One more soft and subtle, Sargent, and the other more hit you over the head with it, and that would be Muka. Muka was way more flamboyant with his design, if that's the proper term. I mean, he was just more outwardly open with showing off his ability to do great edge or great shape. Sargent kind of disguised it in a veil of genius, you know, where he would subtly, almost so much so that when you looked at it, it looked like, it's like any good performer. You look anyone, you'd go, oh, I could do that. I mean, that's just a little highlight on the nose. But the way he twisted and turned that highlight and dropped it off in one fell swoop to make a virtuoso indication is nothing short of magical. To do that, and that's where his true genius is, and is in the flicks, the subtle pressure sensitivity that has to occur at the proper twist and turn of that brush and the right brush at the right time. Oh my God, that's like it's like everything coming together in this synergistic dance of universal dance. I mean, it's just unbelievable. And a lot of people just do not understand the complexity of that kind of thinking, that kind of layering, that kind of foresight. It's amazing.
Are there any books that include the head abstraction?
There are a few out there. We will have some hopefully at some point, but Jack Ferragasso did a pretty good book. Unfortunately, and again, I want to be very careful. I don't want to insult anybody. I'm not here to... I just don't think that the people that wrote books on the Riley method with the abstractions were the greatest draftsmen in the technique. There are other people that I would have rather have seen done books on the technique that I think would have, like Fred, the one that taught our school. I would have loved to have seen him lay down a really beautiful book on the technique, but he never did for some reason. I don't know why he was opposed to it or why he didn't do it. But But yeah, the Ferragasso book, I think it's it's like, I forgot what its title is, like Drawing Worth 1,000 Words or something, I don't know. But just look up Jack Ferragasso and the Riley Method, and you'll probably see the book. And I think it's worth having, but it's a very cryptic and difficult book to understand as far as how the abstractions are laid out. I'm hoping that I can dumb them down and make them a little more user-friendly, which I do believe that we've accomplished at our school, is making, taking some of the mystery out of that Riley Method and not having such a veil of confusion around it. It's just really systematic, rhythmical grid systems based on anatomical nuances, navigating the human form by knowing these, and the more you know of these insertions, origins, things of that sort, the more you can start to have fun designing around them and with them and all that kind of good stuff. So it's something I really do feel like our school has done one of the best jobs of demystifying that technique and actually laying it down in a cleaner manner. And as I get further into producing books and stuff on it, I think you'll see that to be the case. But I would say it's definitely worth having those books in your library, but you don't be surprised if you look at them and go, what am I supposed to do with that? Oh my God. I mean, when I looked at it, it's like vector calculus drawing. It's all like these really cryptic equations that when you look at the byproduct of the work that's created by them, you don't really see the payoff, for how much trouble and work it is to get through the diagram. So I think, yeah, give it a shot. I mean, to each their own, I'm going to be very opinionated, but I'm going to try to pepper it with reasons for that opinion and not just say it's my way or the highway. I think that there's so many good ways. And again, I'm not just trying to be a politician about it. I'm just saying, in order to be a good teacher, you have to be willing to put yourself out there and say, hey, this is what I believe, and if you don't like it, then you can talk bad about me or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's just an opinion. It's an opinion based on lots of years of drawing, and you have to have one in order to be good. I mean, so yeah, just that's the book that I would say that is probably the one that I know of that has abstractions that are derived from the actual Riley Method and is out there for print that you can pick up.
When you're doing a master's study, do you prefer to start with a tracing or projection, or do you like to figure out the proportions yourself?
Oh, it depends. I mean, again, I know it always sounds like he always says that, he just comes up with some vague answer. No, today I drew it because I had to talk about it. So I knew I was going to be moving fast and that I was going to have to talk most of the time, and I didn't have time to, freehand it and stand. I can't stand doing it, so, I can't, it's not that I can't stand doing it, I can't stand up doing it. So I had to just work around the limitations of what I'm up against, and that put me in a different precarious position. So if I was doing it on my own, I probably would have, like I said, I would have just sat down and all primed it with no pencil drawing underneath it, and I would have done it in that manner, like I'm sure he did. So, but that's okay. So again, what you're seeing is a direct painting being done. Now that the drawing's gone, it's all prima all the way, so I'm just kind of going through with my fan brush now and breaking down some edges and trying to smooth out some areas that I think are looking a little too rough because I was using a bristle to put them in with. I should have probably been using a sable. But yeah, you just go and do some cleanup on the back end like I'm doing now.
Is it important to buy the best paint you can afford, such as like Gamblin or Winsor, or is it just a personal choice?
You'll talk to different artists, and again, they'll have different opinions. I mean, I know that like a good friend of mine, Calvin Liang, who's a really wonderful plein air painter, he'll use Winton for a lot of his paintings on the base levels, and then he'll go to a nicer paint for the upper level, knowing that the base level is just kind of a level that he's laying in. And so from that standpoint, some artists will do that. I think you should use the best paint that you can afford, because, and the reason being is that when you use these cheaper, Winsor Newton, Winton, or something student grade, they're using lots of filler, and you're learning how to mix with fillers, which means you're learning how to mix kind of blasphemized. When you go to actually use a better paint, your mixtures are kind of calibrated wonky and weird, and you have to go back and learn how to recalibrate. Just another thing to have to learn how to do on top of 72,000 other things. So I think personally I would use Gamblin or a mid-range, Da Vinci or Grumbacher, and you don't have to use Old Holland or things of that sort. That's like the Rolls Royce of Rolls Royce you know, kind of, you know, paint. And if you're making, you know, $40,000 of painting, yeah, sure, you know, knock yourself out and go get the best. But it's still not going to make you paint great. I mean, but it's better than using really bad paint that's going to develop really bad habits for you. So I would say use the best paint that you can afford, whatever that is. If it's Winton, it's Winton. You just got to suck it up and deal with it. You have to recalibrate later. But if you can afford, then go, you know, jump it up to, you know, and get it on sale or something, or go on eBay and order, you know, buy some or something. You know, there's always opportunities out there. You just have to be resilient and, again, tenacious in your how you do things. I'm going to get ready to lay this little guy in over here. Go ahead, Brian.
It says, I'm trying to get into the art industry, but I'm a little older and only get to learn and work on the portfolio after work. Do you have any thoughts on someone like me competing with someone who's working in the industry? I imagine they would be improving at a higher rate.
Yeah, you just have to accept what is as what is. And I don't mean to ever be, I feel for everybody who's trying to do this at a professional level, but I think what you must do is learn to be very compassionate with yourself, but at the same time, be realistic with yourself. When you look at it, and my job's to be, you know, kind of a sounding board for a reality of what you're up against. I know an awful lot about what I know. There's a lot of areas I don't know anything about, and struggle greatly in other areas. But when it comes to art and understanding what it takes to become a professional and how much time it's going to take, and I have a very good beat on that. And I think, so for someone like yourself, the best thing I'd say is just don't quit your day job on some pipe dream. Just have fun with it. Treat it as an enjoyable thing, and let it blossom into something special if it's going to. Work as hard as you can, as diligently as you can. Squeeze in time whenever you can. But yeah, the reality of it is you're going to have some, you know, other people that are burning 15 times harder than you, faster than you, that you're going to be frustrated by the fact that they're moving so much quicker. There's always someone that's more gifted, someone that's more lucky, someone that's in a better, at least that's what the perception of it on the upper level. We all have curriculums to move through. We're all here to learn certain things, I believe. And, you know, if your curriculum's to be a working artist, you will make it, but it may tax you and challenge you to the actual core of your being to have to do that. And it's good. It should be that way. I mean, if you're going to try to do something like that for a living and you really want to, you know, be up in the upper echelon, you have to sacrifice like that, you know. It is what it is, you know. So at that point, you'll just either say, yes, I'm capable of doing that, or no, I do not have the juice to do that. And then in which case you keep it as a hobby or something fun that you just do for enjoyment. Not everyone should be a working artist. They think they should, they think they want to, but not everyone should be. I don't think. But because it's just hard, you know, it's hard and it's not for everybody. But if it is for you, and it's in your heart to do it, then you'll make the sacrifices, you'll find the time, you'll make the time, you'll find the money, you'll do all those things because it's that important to you. If it's not, you won't, and you won't make it. And it's as simple as that, I think. I don't think there's a lot of in between. It's just where there's a will, there's a way, and the will has to be strong enough to find that way. And so each person has to find that way for themselves, whether it's a rich uncle that can loan them some money, or it's taking out a loan, or it's whatever it takes. You know, education will have to be, you'll have to get educated in this stuff, and it'll take money and time, because it always does. And you'll want to make sure you make the best, smartest decisions so that you don't waste that time and money, because you may not have a second opportunity, depending on who you are, where you're coming from. And these are just I think they're just, again, common sense things. They're not always what people want to hear, but they are what ultimately it'll come down to. You got to have resources, and you've got to pick the right decision to use those resources on in order to make the most rational, logical decision and get to where you want to go. If you want, you know, that's what I kind of think.
Do you have any advice on drawing or painting a portrait and achieving the correct age of the person?
Yeah, I mean, again, whenever you're painting anybody, you're going to want to do the best version of them, I would imagine. You're probably not going to want to paint them uglier than they are or whatever. You know, you're going to want to paint them in the most flattering light. You're going to want to capture their eccentricities, but also their subtleties in such a way that you're not overly flattering them, or because that would be insulting, or you're dumbing it down too much, which would also be insulting. This is why portrait commissions and painting people that are closest to you is not my top 5 favorite things to do, because the pressure to, if you exaggerate certain aspects of their, maybe you just messed up. I mean, just quite frankly, messed up the nose. Not because you were thinking, oh, I want to mess up this person's nose to make them mad at me, but they're going to go, that doesn't look like my nose. And you're like, oh God, you know, I tried my hardest. I just didn't do good on it. I messed up, you know, I mean, I'm not perfect. But if it's someone really close to you, then they can take it really like, well, he thinks I have a big nose, or he thinks I'm this way or that way. It's like, no, I just messed up, man. And it just makes your job like 50 times harder. So capturing people's likenesses, getting their age properly, and also still flattering them or not insulting them. These are all very difficult things to do. And it's what, you know, Sargent did it to the nth degree. I mean, he was the best he was a plastic surgeon, for God's sakes. One of the best plastic surgeons of all time. He just happened to be using paint and brushes instead of a scalpel. But man, that guy would have been a mean freaking plastic surgeon, I'll tell you that. Just with those skill sets and that hand dexterity and that design sense that he had. That's what you would hope. You hope that your plastic surgeon has that kind of ability. That's what you would be hoping. So I don't know if I even answered that question. I think I got so far off tangent there that maybe I was off into La La Land or something. I don't know.
Are there any schools in the New York area that you might recommend?
I would go on Art Renewal Center. And again, Jacob Collins is really good. I think it's the Realist Academy. It used to be the Water Street Atelier. It's changed a couple times, and I'm always kind of behind the times on keeping up with what people are naming things and what the changing of the guard, so to speak. But Jacob's really an awesome freaking powerhouse talent and teacher and painter and all that kind of good stuff. So I would say, you know, that would be good. New York area, you know, I have some New Yorkers out studying with me right now that couldn't seem to find much. So. And for what they were looking for, so for whatever that means. So I don't know. I'm not an East Coast guy, but I'm sure there's something good around there. And new things are popping up all the time. The problem you're going to find is it's very difficult to find an atelier that has a seasoned curriculum that's solid and can stand on its own, and actually is worth its weight. You might find 1 or 2 good teachers, 1 or 2 good classes, but you may not find a whole curriculum that's been well established over decades of trial and error and things like that. And that's where we just freaking are stellar, is that we've done our time in the trenches, we've developed a great curriculum, we've polished it off by teaching the classes 40, 50 times, 60 times, some of them 100 times. And we've managed to really figure out how they work and how they work best and in what context with other things. And so that's what you're going to be looking for. But yes, there's got to be something in New York, but I would say Jacob Collins is the first one that comes to mind. Grand Central Academy, but they're more site-size and they're going to be a little more rigid in their teachings, which could be good for you or it could be bad for you, depending on what temperament you have, what industry you want to go into, and what you're looking for as far as your training.
Do you think it could be bad to draw too much with a ballpoint pen instead of drawing more with charcoal? It says, I know it's better to train value with charcoal, but other than that, are there any disadvantages?
It's like anything. I mean, you know, too much of anything is not a good thing. You know, you need variety. You need, you know, graphite's going to teach you some things, and charcoal's going to teach you other things, and silver point's going to teach you other things, and etching's going to teach you other things. I mean, everything teaches you something a little different. So, if you stop everything and just use a ballpoint pen, you're going to be pretty one-sided. You're only going to know certain dexterity. You're only going to know how to manipulate certain edges with that one implement. You're not going to be multi-fluent in many different areas, so it'll ultimately hinder you a little bit for sure.
I'm very interested in the online program. Any tips or info would be awesome.
Well, there's plenty on there. I know we have not done the best job of kind of describing how that thing functions, and that's what my next goal is. Trains. Next goal in the next couple of weeks is going to be, or months, That's going to be a long one, I have a feeling. Is going to be, I'm slotted to kind of explain in video form these different mentoring options we have, the different, different navigation options, how to set up a training regimen. These are all things that are on my to-do list. But for right now, the way it works is basically you sign up monthly and it's like a gym membership. You're going to get charged every month until you cancel your membership. As you get into the program, you have access to all that content at one time. I would suggest going phase to phase and not jumping through too many phases because you're going to get confused, or you may not have the proper information to do phase 4 portrait right out of the chute in oil. You might need to work your way up because that's the way it was designed. I designed it to be the way our curriculum should flow at our school, but nobody can do it even there because they can only come in after work on the weekends just like everybody else, and they're not independently wealthy and they can't come in whenever they want all the time. So they're always missing certain classes, they're always having gaps in their learning. So online you have a better opportunity to actually navigate the information that I know in the way that I always intended it to be, but that I can't even do at my own school because of, again, the limitations of what we're working with. So when you come onto that program, you basically are going to be navigating it based on your own interests. So you might say, well, I want to spend most of my time on portrait. Well, then just stay in the portrait phases and just do phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, portrait, drawing and painting, or whatever, or just drawing. It's your option. It's a lot of freedom. And there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that kind of freedom. But I'm trying to cultivate artists that can think outside the box, that are preparing themselves for the rigors of being a real life artist. And you're not going to have somebody there babysitting you all the time, 24/7, telling you everything to do at every moment and what context to do it. That's not good. Even if you could get that, it's not good for you. So what I would say is that you get on there, you try it out for a month, you navigate around, you jump forward every once in a while and see what's coming, so that you get excited about what's coming down the pike. You basically now, and again, there's people on the forums. You've got workbooks that are incredibly robust that go along with the videos. So we have with each phase that you do, there's a workbook that goes along with it that gives you assignments as well as the reference to work from that I worked from, or Eric, or whoever else did the phase. And so you get to actually go in and get those workbooks and print them out, and you can keep those. Now, if you say, well, I'm having a tough month come up, I need to drop out of the online, well then, yeah, you drop out, but you don't have access anymore. So you maybe kind of stumble through and work for a little while, and then you come back on when you get your, when you're able to afford it again, or whatever. So you go back and forth like that. So you can learn at your own pace, whenever you want, in the comfort of your own studio and house. You don't have to move to San Diego and spend countless thousands of dollars. And is it going to be, it's better in some ways than our school, and it's different in some ways than our school. So I think both of them have incredible benefits. So I would say, if you're looking to self-motivate, I mean, I'm going to be there talking just like I do this, but it's going to be better. It's going to be an overhead cam, so you're going to get the best possible seat in the house. You're going to get my verbalization. You're going to get a picture of the palette that I'm mixing with down here. You're going to get the reference up in the corner. You're going to get the reference that I worked from afterwards, so that you can go back. You can watch me lay in the head 52 times, 152 times. If you were in the school with me watching me do this demo, you can't do video. You can take some still shots at break time, but you're going to be watching it from over in the left-hand corner, barely being able to see what I do because you're going to be at a completely oblique angle. And then you're going to have to see 52 of these demos in order to be able to remember the procedure. At home, you can watch this one painting be done 52 times, and you can ingrain that procedure faster, in my opinion. So in some ways, it's superior, and in other ways, it's not quite as good. You don't have the social aspect. You don't have the me coming around and working directly on your painting and things like that. But again, if you're stuck somewhere where you don't have an option of moving to San Diego, otherwise pick up, get the U-Haul, drive out here, and sign up for classes. But if you can't do that, the online is going to be the next best thing, and it's going to be just as good and sometimes better. Trust me. But you'll have to be the determining factor of that. We do have some technical glitches that we're working our way through, which will, when you're working with this kind of technology, you always have that. You got to keep in mind that you need good streaming from wherever you're at. You can't, if you don't have good streaming, it's going to dumb it down, and you're not going to see it in high def because you can't stream high def from where you're at. So there's lots of little things that you have to think about on your end, but that stuff's continually getting better. It's getting cheaper, it's getting faster. 2 or 3, 4, 5 years down the road, no problem. Everyone's going to have fast internet. Google's coming up with stuff. I mean, everybody's coming up with faster and faster stuff. So we're ahead of the curve. We're the only online school that I know that has tons of critiquing options of every level that you could possibly want, including working with me if you want to spend the money and time. Or the guys I've trained that are teaching for me. I mean, it's amazing the options. You got forums, you've got competitions. We got Gurney going to be judging the competition this year. I mean, it's phenomenal. So getting on there, being part of the community, and getting in there and getting a little bit more tech savvy. You don't have to be that tech savvy, because I'm not, but you just have to be decent, and decent enough to be able to push play and watch, be attentive, and follow through on the exercises, and you will do great. I'm working with a couple guys right now that are doing so good. They're doing better than people that are at our school. So I know it works for sure, but it is hard work. I'm not lying. I won't lie to you. It's going to be backbreaking hard work, but you're going to see the results, so it's going to help you to want to do that work. So anyway, I'm going to take a break. Didn't mean to plug it so much, but that was a question that somebody asked, so I just answered it as honestly as I could. Let me take a break for a second. I'm going to come back. I'm going to finish off this little guy, and a couple other things, and we're going to put this one to rest. Okay, so I'm back for the last session here. We're going to wrap it up, about 25 minutes. And, I thank you guys for your good questions. It's been really fun. I really enjoy doing these. So I'm going to try to do them more frequently. I think we've got a bunch of fun podcasts planned, inspirational books that have really inspired me over the years, ones that I think you guys will find really helpful, getting you motivated and keeping you motivated when you're on these programs, and when you're getting, because you're going to go through periods when you're in the doldrums and you're just not feeling good, you want to quit, and we've all been there. And sometimes just a good motivational book, the right one at the right time, can change everything for you. And again, it's always so cliche, new agey kind of self-help junk, whatever. There's a lot to be said for it, Don't poo-poo it until, once you get yourself in one of those conundrums where you really feel like you can't get out of your own way. Sometimes that's what you need, is a little kick in the butt, okay, so I was off on a tangent. As I'm building this up, I'm looking at layers. I have to do the underneath layer, then I have to do the intermediate layer, then I have to do the highlight layer. Each layer has to be worked out before you make it to the top. Too many people are going to jump right to the top way too early, and they're going to pay the piper for it. They're not going to get the look that they're looking for. I was online today on Facebook, and I was looking at a painting that Graydon Parrish had posted of this really beautiful, beautiful tapestry work on this lady's dress of a commission that he did, and it was just really beautifully, conscientiously painted. I mean, really nicely done. So it made me think about like the layering as I was looking at it, and I commented on it. But just how he's layering it up was very carefully and judiciously done, correctly. And if you don't do it right, you won't get that look, So, to look at some of the maestros of layering, you're looking at people like Rembrandt, Franz Hals, Sargent, Fetchin. I mean, geez, there's any number of them that you can hang your hat on and look at for virtuoso layering ability, just unbelievable. So just keep in mind, I mean, it's not one foul swoop. When you look at that little piece of metal over there, it's a 5 or 6 at least step process. Lots of back and forth, and it's not done carelessly or in a fast manner. It's very slow and careful, and sometimes you got to scrub the whole thing and start over again. Just think like Sargent. In that time, just say, I'm going to put my Sargent cap on, and I'm going to really carefully paint this thing.
For artists that work more tightly, do you have any advice about how they can loosen up?
Yeah, take time away from what you do. So in our school, I designed a whole sequence of gesture classes, and gesture portrait, gesture landscape, gesture figure, and one for all the disciplines. So landscape, still life, portrait, figure. And in those classes, we have about anywhere between 40 minutes and 60 minutes to do a statement from a live model or from life. That's hard to do, man. I mean, that is, and there's nothing to hide behind. You can't do anything other than do it. Either do it or don't do it. But I've had a lot of people in the past that were kind of victims of their own training regimen, where they were, you know, whether they were sight size or whatever, and they just were not fast thinkers outside the box. So when they would go try to do that exercise, it would just kill them. They were almost paralyzed by fear or by lack of ability to know how to layer up that quickly and that efficiently, which I find very helpful to loosen up a tighter painter. And I think a loose painter, by the same token, needs to go and get a lot of really strong, long efforts in. Maybe not like, you know, 200-hour efforts or something, but you know, good 50, 60-hour, you know. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours on paintings, usually large, complicated ones with multiple figures, but you know, you just have to take time away and force yourself and get a timer and be very disciplined. You know, when that timer goes off, put the painting down, grab a new panel, set up a new painting, new still life, new something. You can do this from photos too. You don't have to do it from just from life. People get this real dogmatic, must paint from life in order to be awesome. I mean, it is definitely advisable, and you should spend a period of your career working from life a lot. But can you be a good painter without working from life? Of course. I really firmly believe that. But the depths that you learn from perceiving things from a three-dimensional life down to a two-dimensional surface back to three-dimensional, you can't really describe how that happens when you're working from live models versus photos. Photos lie a lot, and you have to learn where they lie. And the way you do that is by cross-referencing what you know from life work, and then you're able to deduct why it's not looking that way based on the difference from what you're used to seeing and what you know reality is based on the life work you've done, cross-referencing it and then putting it in the proper context from photos. So photo work is not evil. It's not bad, but you need to use it in the proper context. So I would highly recommend those people that are on the online program to make sure that you set up some stuff with your friends or get your friends over that are like-minded, get on the program together. Every once in a while, get together and have everyone take turns posing for you, posing for each other. And that way you start to apply these concepts to life work and see what the difference between the two are and make your own deductions about which ones you like better or worse or this or that. But I work pretty religiously from photos. I have no qualms or problems with saying that. But I've also done my fair time in the trenches with life work, so I can confidently say it doesn't bug me because of how much work I do and maintenance I do in life work in order to stay honest. So from that standpoint, you know, that's just my take on it. Again, these are all opinions. All I can have is my opinion. I don't know what else I could be sharing with you other than, you know, this is my experience based on what I've done. I know I'm definitely have a long ways to go and I have a lot to learn. I by no means am where I would like to be ultimately, but I will continue to train for my whole life, and when it's over, whether it's next week or tomorrow or tonight or, you know, I don't know, a year from now, 10 years from now, 100 years, 50 years from now, I don't know. None of us know. But in the meantime, I will continue to try to see better, think more efficiently, problem solve better, have more fun, try to find the joy. I mean, there's so many things that I did not anticipate having to learn that nothing would surprise me now. If you were to say, oh, this is going to happen or that, I said, well, that sounds about right. It just doesn't surprise me anymore. It's in a good way and in a bad way. I mean, there's just so much stuff that comes down the road. And if you're a young 20-something, you know, then God bless you. You got a lot of good years ahead of you, and just have fun and try to work as diligently and as hard as you can and have those great lofty goals, because I did. And some of them came true and some didn't, and some, when they did come true, weren't what I thought they were. And I had to reassess and move on. But for me to try to prevent you from experiencing that yourself would be like a parent trying to keep their son or daughter from making the same mistakes they did. You just have to let them at some point make their way and hope that you taught them right and trained them well enough to where they can make good logical decisions based on their own ethics that you helped to instill, and that they do a good job. And that's all you can do, I would imagine. Not being a parent, but I mean, doesn't, you know, I mean, that's what I would think you would want for your kid, you know. Trying to get them to not learn anything or don't make the same mistake I did. I mean, why, you know, why not? I mean, everyone's got to go out and do their thing, so.
How did you learn perspective drawing?
You know, it's not my strongest area. I'm pretty good at it from an intuitive level, and I picked up a lot of it by being around my dad, because he's if you don't know my dad, he's as good at perspective and tech as we are, a lot of us, at anatomy. He has his own systems. It's unbelievable. I've sat through some of his classes recently. I was in his class last term. I'm going to maybe try to do this next term with him. I've already done the class before with him. But I'm in there whenever I can with him because he possesses an ability and perspective that's so magical and beautiful that I just don't know many people that are as good at it as he is. So, and he's laying it down online. Not so much in technical, like you're not going to see this labeled as a perspective class, but it'll be picture making. It'll be tech drawing. It'll be tech painting. And in that, he will talk about measuring systems and things that you can do to cheat perspective, to change perspective. Eric's coming out with one this month that's actually a very technical, basic perspective 101, vanishing points, station points, measuring cues and things like that. And that was where you're going to want to start. Then you'll work your way into my dad's classes down in the specialty areas, and you'll start seeing how he's bending those concepts intuitively, kind of like I do with anatomy. And then you're going to start putting that together, and that's going to be worth gold. I mean, that's like, you can't even put a value on that. But perspective is one of those classes that can be taught more mathematically. Its origins are more in math and science, and so you can learn it a little bit more like a math and a science. It's one of the areas I say, get a good book on it. There's billions of them out there, and just sit down and truck through it. And if you don't like it, don't feel too bad, because I'm not a huge fan, but you got to know it. It's kind of like saying, I just want to paint heads, but I don't really ever want to paint a landscape or a still life. Well, anything that's not a head in your painting is going to be a still life or a landscape, So you can't get away from it. Where we go, you can't just do a floating head in the ether for the rest of your life and expect to have a great career doing it. It's not going to happen. But you need to, know that you need to have range and depth to your ability.
How is traditional art seen in today's market? I like traditional art a lot more, but I've noticed a shift to digital because of efficiency, etc.
Well, no one's ever going to pay $100,000 for a digital painting, I'll tell you that, or 50 or 10 or even 5. So yeah, for a quick fix and going out and just working in an industry and making a little bit of money as an artist, digital is going to trump traditional probably. But if you want to go out and sell originals for thousands of dollars on the secondary market after you get paid for your job, like a lot of the art guys do, Eric goes out and makes 3 times as much selling his original as he did on the job that he did the painting for. So does Lucas. So they have a secondary monetary source that is awesome because they can paint. But if you were a digital painter, you'd be able to print a printout maybe on a giclée if you're lucky, and maybe get $50, $100 for it, maybe if you're lucky, and you might have to sell, if you can sell thousands and thousands of them, then maybe you can make a really good return on it. And there are a couple guys that do that. But you're never going to see the price point on a digital painting, in my opinion, come anywhere close to an original oil painting from a great painter. It's just not going to happen. But that being said, yeah, if you want to just go out and hang your hat on a quick career and just try to get going, then digital is probably a better way to go, because that's what the industries are demanding right now, especially in concepting, visual development stuff. But if you want to do some originals, you want to, sell originals on the side of doing your regular work, then you're going to want to learn how to paint. But painting takes about 10 times as long to learn how to do as digital. I mean, because you can do a lot of photo bashing and things of that sort, which basically is more montage and collage, which is still hard, but it's not as hard as really painting manually those kind of effects, in my opinion. So again, it just, it depends on where you want to hang your hat and what you want to do, really.
What's your opinion on water-soluble oils?
It's kind of an oxymoron or a contradiction in terms. I don't know what you want to call it, but water-based oils? I mean, water and oil does not mix, so what is going on there? I don't know. But they're okay. They've gotten way better. I used them years ago in a workshop and actually despised them, but I tried them. One of our students had, I think, Holbein or something, and it was really quite nice. I was like, well, it's not as bad as I remember, I mean, so I think they're getting better, and I think they're really good for people that have like chemical sensitivities or some kind of autoimmune problem or something, and and otherwise wouldn't be able to paint. So I think they definitely serve their purpose, but you know, you just have to determine whether you you know, you want to use them or not. I don't use them because I like the original feel of oil, and I'm not going to use them unless I have some ailment or something that requires that I do that.
What are your thoughts on learning anatomy for comic book artists who draw in graphic lines with no values, and how to apply the Watts training to comic book style drawing?
Well, I mean, again, it depends on if you're looking at Frank Miller, or you're looking at Alex Ross, or you're looking at Adam Hughes, or you're looking at, I mean, I don't know who you're looking at, because, you know, Adam Hughes has to draw as good as we do. He has to draw in a similar manner than we do. So does Alex Ross. These are graphic novelists. You know, Frank Miller doesn't need to. He's going to use more of a graphic solution. Doesn't need to quite know how to draw anatomy quite as well. Although, to do it at a masterful level, and I love his stuff. Same with Mignola and any of those guys. But when you get into the old, you know, classic, you know, comic guys like Neil Adams and Al Williamson and all these different, you know, Frazetta and these guys, I mean, they knew how to freaking draw like $1 million. Now, if you want to try to do the modern version of kind of what they're doing, I'm not terribly fond of it, you know. Some of it's good, some's not. Is it as good as the golden age of comics? No, not even close, I don't think. So, you know, again, it really depends on what you're after. You know, where you want to hang your hat, how much time you want to do. I mean, most people have this really it seems like a short-sighted, like they ask a question, but they already know the answer. The answer is hard work, and that the old stuff's better than the new stuff most of the time, and it's because, you know, technology doesn't always improve things, and sometimes it actually hurts things and goes backwards a little bit on us. And so I think with comics, I haven't seen work in comics that's done as good as the stuff that I like from the age I just mentioned. So maybe I'm the wrong person to ask, but for me, you know, like Riley, I mean, the method, it teaches you how to draw, invent out of your head, to manipulate, to idealize, to make things look better, to sensationalize them, which is all comics. Comics, you don't do a boring person. You don't do a boring pose. Every pose has to be the best pose, the best staging, the best angle, the best lighting, the best position. And Frazetta was the master of that, the grand master of one of the best at choosing poses of all time. And he never did a boring pose. I don't care what the person was doing. And so in order to do that, you know, the figure quick sketch classes that we teach are tailor-made for storyboard artists, conceptors, visual development artists, sequential comic artists, anybody that has to do quick invented figures out of their head, manipulating them, idealizing them, and making them look spectacular. That's going to be, you know, come out of that Riley method. And that Riley method, I mean, train. Can't tell you how much it's saved my butt on things like that. But it's not going to give up its secrets easily. We're going to help you understand those secrets, and that's my job. But you still have to earn it through thousands of drawings. I mean, I've done more quick sketch than I could even, it's almost scary to even mention how much I've done. But I love it, and I still love it. And maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm weird that way, but I don't know. I just love it. So, but I think, yes, it would benefit you greatly, for sure, without a doubt, 100%. I have no problem saying that.
Does knowing color temperature and value come more through experience or through being taught?
It's a combination of both. Being taught by someone good, being taught by someone bad can really mess you up for decades. I've seen people that, man, they're so jacked up. They go take a class with some really crazy colorist, and they're head swimming for decades, man. I mean, it just screws them up. So you want to be careful, like anything. Color theory, color manipulation. Seek out, you know, the Jeffrey Hines. You know, come work with me. Come work with people that you like their color. First and foremost, you have to like their color in order to study with them. If you don't study with them. There's no reason. Same goes with edges, same goes with drawing, painting, anything. If you look at their paintings and say, I despise that person's paintings, but I'm going to go study with them. I'm like, what are you thinking? You know, I mean, don't do that. Only study with someone if you love what they do, or you really like. When people come into our school, the first thing I say is, look at that wall over there, because we have all these wall hangers from past students that have, you know, basically that's almost like a graduation at our school, is when you start getting wall hangers, you're getting to that point where you're really getting up there. And a wall hanger is an outstanding effort in our technique that's put on the wall for future artists and students coming through to be inspired by this system that we're teaching. So the first thing I say is look on that wall. That's what we're going to get you to do. If you like it, stay. If you don't, probably not the right place for you. That's as simple as that. Just, do you like it or do you not like it? 2 seconds. Don't have to hypothesize, don't have to theorize. Just, do you like it or do you not like it? Yes, I like it. Good. Then that's what we're going to get you to do. Sit down. We'll be working with you for the next 5-10 years, or however long you can be here, and we'll get you that good. But that's our goal, and we do it time and time and time again. We have so many amazing people that have come in literally from scratch. I mean, could barely hold a pencil. And 4 or 5 years later, they're on that wall. And I've seen it happen time and time again. And I know it sounds like we're tooting our own horn, but if something's working and it's going good, there's nothing wrong with telling people about it. That's why I have no problem with the conviction behind what I teach, because I know it works. I know it like the back of my hand. I don't have to theorize about it or hard sell it or pretend like it is what it is. You either get it or you don't. If you don't, go find something else that works better for you. It's all good. No worries. But it works phenomenal for the people that get it, that want to get what we share. It's like you're finding an oasis in the middle of the Sahara Desert or something after you've been out there for months or something with no water.
Do you take any sabbatical times where you take like a month or a year off from painting?
I really need to, and I haven't, and it's been kicking my hiney. It will be coming. I need to for my own health and sanity, but because what we do is just not easy to do. It's not an easy way to teach. It's not anything easy about it, and so you'll find very few people willing to do it, or even can do it, or can handle doing it without either a mental breakdown or some kind of, just flaming out, just burning out. So yeah, I will probably at some point. I'm right now I'm 45. Probably by the time I'm 50, major things will change in whether I keep teaching or not, in the capacity that I'm doing, or whether I just the online school may be my lineage after that point. I don't know yet. I don't. I've said that for a long time. It really depends on so many factors, and I absolutely love teaching. It's been the biggest part of my life as an artist. It's taken way more precedent than my fine art or anything else, but there will come a time when I want to share with the world what I've trained my whole life doing, which is to be the best artist that I can, and I have not yet gotten to do that, and it's partially my own fault, but I do want to share that part of me with the world, and in order to do that, I won't be able to teach in the capacity at least that I'm doing now. I know that. So yeah, things will change. What that looks like right now, I do not know. I do not have a crystal ball, but I know they need to change and they will change, and I'll be the one that determines when that happens, or maybe life will. I don't know. We'll see.
Do you have any favorite artists that are working today?
Oh yeah, Jiminy Christmas. Where to start? Phil Hale. Awesome, phenomenal. Morgan Westling, Z.S. Lang, Jeremy Libkeen. Just now as I draw a blank, Schmidt. A lot of just amazingly cool. Laura Robb, Carolyn Anderson. There's just a ton of them. A lot of my contemporaries I see in shows. Huge fan, love them. I'm almost like a fanboy. I just love I love good art. And I have no problem commending my competition or competitors. I don't really see them as that. I see them more as comrades in arms. People that are fighting the good fight, fighting the fight to be a great artist, to share with the world the beauty that they see and the beauty that they witness, and to bring that beauty forth is no small order, and it's no easy order. So we oftentimes need to band together, and the artists need to stick together, because we are all in the same battle, and we're actually on the same team. We're not, shouldn't be against each other. So that's why I'm always trying to spearhead that and try to keep people more grounded in the fact that, try not to be negatively competitive. But yeah, artists that I love, those are some of them. God, the list could go on and on, but those are the ones that just pop into my head as I'm just kind of thinking about it right off the top of my head. Sean Chetham's work a lot. He's really awesome. There's just a bunch of young guys coming up that are really phenomenal painters. Glenn Dean's really got a nice rhythm going right now with his stuff, and most of these guys are fine art painters. But you know, people like Paul Bonner and I mean, there's just a slew of them out there that you know that I admire and love. You know, James Gurney's awesome with his concepting and his stuff and I don't know, there's just a whole slew of them. Then you get into concepting, Jamie Jones, and you know, you've got Craig Mullins, you know, always a big fan. Nathan Falks, you know, awesome. I mean, there's just a whole freaking truckload of them, you know, that every time I'm on Facebook or something, I'm like, gee, man, there's another great guy that most of them I know, just from having been around for so long, kind of having worked in these different industries and stuff. You kind of see people come and go out of industries and different things. Just know it's a small world out there, so just keep a cool demeanor and just have fun and relax and try not to, you know, make waves. Just go out and try to have fun, being the best painter you can, and get good so that you can enjoy. When you're really good technically, other artists just open up to you. They're very nice and giving and talkative and love to share stories, and it's not like if you're not good, they're not going to do that. But man, I'm telling you, there's no accident getting good. So when you get good, people know that you did a lot of hard work, because there's no accident. And you know, and the worst thing that someone can say to you is, "Oh, you're so talented. You're so naturally talented," or something. It just makes me want to scream every time I hear that. So this is kind of it. The timer just went. That was like 3 hours. I didn't mean it to be that long, but a lot of gabbing and a lot of yeah, it's just hard to do a Sundblom that fast. I mean, shoot, I don't think he would do it that fast. So I'm happy with how it came out. Yes, it could use work in all kinds of areas, but for a quickie little demo on direct painting, hopefully that helped and that you enjoyed it. That's my hopes on all these, is that you just get something out of it, and hopefully maybe something philosophical. Yeah, I hope I didn't, you know, banter too much about that, but that's just who I am. It is what who I am. So anyway, I hope to see you online. I hope to see you in the atelier, or maybe at a workshop, or if not, maybe just out at a show or something. Always come up, say hi. Always appreciate that, and keep, you know, push and play, have fun, and try to just stay in the paint, you know, and just be compassionate with yourself. And this is a hard thing that you guys are doing, so just really, really, really give yourself a lot of compassion, because it's not easy. So anyway, thanks a bunch for joining in. I will be doing a lot more of these this year. We've got podcasts, we've got inspirational. We're going to do one on Riley and our lineage of the school with Riley. We're going to do one on Frazetta. I'm going to do a book of the month. We're going to do I have all kinds of cool stuff planned. So on the YouTube channel. But if you want to join in on us for more formal training on the techniques that got me to be able to do this stuff, then you'll want to go online. But in the meantime, just enjoy these freebies, because they're really cool, and I hope you get a kick out of them. Take care.